Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Faculty Development Program on Advanced and Innovative Approaches in Management Education. And the theme for today is student engagement. Now, in the area of management, outside class activity or extracurricular activity and co-curricular activity, they are very, very important. The reason being that we aim to develop our students and make them industry ready. So this is something that we aim at in a business school. So keeping that in mind, I would like to welcome Dr. Sona Vikas. Dr. Sona Vikas is an associate professor in IILM University. She is a PhD from GGSIP University, Delhi, a university topper and a gold medalist during post-graduation, a UGC NET qualified professional, and has over 22 years of experience in industry and academia. She has, to her credit, more than 70 research papers in international and national journals, edited books, and conference proceedings. She has authored around 6 edited books. She is also master trainer for the ICP CSR certificate program under IICA Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. Leadership skills and pro-people skills are her forte. She is known for her proactiveness, adeptness, and multitasking, handling work under all kinds of pressures, her positivity and optimism. With her industry experience in HR, sales, MIS, quality, she brings in a lot of practical insight in the classroom. Her subjects of interest include HR, OB, journal management, CSR, ethics, and tourism. Students mentoring and conducting behavioral training programs for both students and corporate is where her heart lies. She has been conducting training for corporates, teachers, students at various colleges, schools, and corporates in Delhi and NCR. So welcome, Dr. Sona, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saima, and a very, very good morning to all of you. I hope you've all had your breakfast. We are going to make you do some tasks during this session, so I just hope you have the energy for that. What we are going to do today is talk about an area which not only is close to it should be close to any teacher, but also I think it is of importance, relevance, and very, very critical as far as management teachers are concerned, because we are most of the times taking subjects which students have ready material available on the internet. And to engage with such an audience who knows that all material is available, why should I attend your class? Is it only because of attendance? We need to have certain ways in which we have to address this problem. And given the fact that the students have a very, very low attention span as far as the class is concerned, it becomes immensely important for us to ensure that all of them, whether it is a class of 50, 60, 100, whatever the strength is, each and every student is able to contribute, participate, and is engaged in the class. Now, all of us are involved in teaching at every level, whether it is undergraduate, whether it is postgraduate. It does not matter. Most of the times we think that, it's okay, it's an undergraduate class, or okay, it's an MBA class. This is my favorite subject. I've been teaching for so many years. But that is where the issue lies, because of the fact that we think that it's all right to not be prepared for a class. That is where it dilutes the entire classroom teaching. What I'm going to talk today about is a mix of strategies which I have adopted over the last decades, since the time I have been in academics, on how to engage with the students. Now, before I start that, I'm going to ask you a question. So let's ask, and please share your views. Just give me a second. Can you confirm if you are able to see the screen?
Yes, ma'am, we are able to see, ma'am.
Great. Just a second. Stuck. Okay. Now, my question to you is, do you need to engage the students in the class? Do you need to teach them? You could mention it in the chat box. You can raise your hand. You can respond in any way that's possible. Yes, Dr. Lashmika.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I think engaging, rather than engaging, teaching the student is what is required for us. Engaging the student anyone can do. It is not only a teacher can do. Even someone who is going to just make us a compensation during that task, even they can do. But teaching the student is more required.
All right. Does anybody else agree, disagree?
Good morning, ma'am. I think both have to be done, engaging as well as teaching.
Actually, ma'am, teaching cannot happen without engaging. It is a prerequisite. One cannot ever expect to teach unless one can engage with the students constructively.
All right. So supposing there is a class which is not listening to you, however, they're all physically present, mentally absent, you go on teaching the class. Is that what we are looking for?
No, ma'am.
So what should be the ideal situation? And see, you don't have to agree. Important thing is for us to understand the difference between both. Number two, what should be ideally the case? You may or you may not agree. Yes, somebody is writing engagement is a prerequisite. Okay, engaging, teaching with engagement, both are important. All right. Now, what I'm going to share with you is a small experience from my side. What I have felt, and coming from industry, I have realized that students are looking for content, no doubt about it, when they're sitting in the class. But because of the fact that Google is there for them, they are not looking for us to teach them. They are looking for us to tell them how to apply the concepts. And that application can happen if we are able to engage students with meaningful discussions, situation-based analysis, with case studies, with caselets. So what they are looking for is, while we are not diluting the teaching, but as a faculty, today engagement is very important. Students have very, very categorically started saying, "Ki this is available on the net. Tell us something which is not available. Tell us something which is, which we cannot find very easily." So if that is the situation, we need to be very, very clear in terms of engagement. Now, what does engagement mean? What do we mean by engagement? Engagement doesn't mean that we give up our teaching. It does not mean that at all. Now, having said that, I have another question for you. Does student participation imply the same as student engagement? What do you think? Anyone? Okay, there is somebody in the chat. Students must have a yes, please.
Engagement is a much broader term. Participation is only restricted to the class typically, but then engagement can go beyond the class also.
Okay. All
so
right.
Say coaching or mentoring or sometimes counseling or just being there for the child or the student, can also amount to engagement.
Right. So participation, do we agree, is not entirely student engagement? Is that what we are agreeing to on a consensus?
Ma'am, participation is a part of engagement, I believe.
Okay.
It cannot be said as engagement only.
All right. If engagement is there, then we can generate participation. Okay. So see, all of us come with very different experiences. We all come with backgrounds where we have engaged with students. We have ensured that they participate. We try to make sure that whatever learning outcomes we have, specified or we have thought of before entering a class, they are met. So Ankit is saying that participation depends on the willingness and engagement, depends on the way how the things are delivered. So we all have an understanding of this. There is no doubt about it. What I would like to, mention here is that while engagement is a far broader term, and we have participation as just one of the components, the most important aspect of engagement is the fact that students are able to be involved in the class. The word involvement is of very, very critical, you can say it is very critical as far as engagement is concerned. Because if they are involved, they will feel connected to you. They will feel connected to the class, to the module, to the subject that you're teaching. If they are only participating, how do I ensure participation? I'm asking you a question, you are answering. It is not necessary that you are engaged. You are just participating. But if there is a way in which I'm ensuring that you're involved in the class, you are equally thinking as I am thinking. If I'm giving you a situation and I'm telling you, put yourself in this situation and answer the question, or imagine that if you were in this situation, what will you do? So what happens in the process is I am able to engage with you. I am able to involve you. I am able to connect with you. And then physical participation or presence in the class becomes very, very dim. What happens is you are mentally present. You are contributing to your own learning journey. And that is exactly where the reason why we need to engage with the students. Now, this engagement currently that I'm focusing on is about the classroom engagement. I am not talking right now about outside the class. We are talking about student engagement in the class. Now, ideally, all of us have a class typically of 1 hour. At IILM, we have 1 hour, 15 minutes. So imagine 75 minutes classroom. How is it possible to ensure that they are participating, they are engaged? How do we do that? It is not an easy task. Some of you may be having a class of 50 minutes, 1 hour. We have 1 hour, 15 minutes. Maybe somebody has even 2 hours. How difficult it is as a teacher to engage with the students. And we know that it cannot be confined to participation anymore. Participation is past. So if we are focusing on student engagement, what is it in for the students? What is it in for the faculty if a student is engaged in the class? Let's work on that. And then we'll come to the fact that how do we do that? Any questions here till now? Shall we proceed? Okay. Now, most of the times, there is a perception that a faculty who does a lot of activities in the class, a lot of inside and outside classroom engagements are there, that faculty is very popular with them. Now, this popularity has to be understood as a means that this faculty is not making the students fall off to sleep, or they are keeping that the student bunch so busy in the class that the student doesn't have time to browse through his net or check his social media pages during the class. Or it can be interpreted that this faculty has prepared well for the class in advance. Now imagine if you are doing that, even if you have a teaching load of 14 to 16 hours in a week, it does not matter, because the fact is you are preparing for each and every class, ensuring that each and every student in your class is wide awake, is learning, is contributing to his own knowledge and development. Believe me, the day we have this objective in mind, that I have to be prepared for every class, not just in terms of the content, but also delivery, also in terms of what activities I will do, what kind of session I will take. Will it be a kind of a flipped classroom where I've already given them material in advance? All that is something which we need to very clearly understand. Right. Now, Professor Manjunath, we will talk about this in a while. I will address your question in a while. Just give me some time. We'll just do that. And in the end of the session, almost towards the end, I'm actually going to make you do an activity which will help you to think. As teachers, we need to be out of the box thinkers. You know, the time is not such that today I'm an HR faculty. Let me teach about recruitment. I will tell them about what are the different, methods of internal and external sources. What is the process? What are some of the examples? No, they don't need that. I can prepare a PPT, give them a chapter in advance, tell them just read it on your own. In the class, I cannot do that. I cannot read from a PPT. That is something which is totally unacceptable today, irrespective of whatever subject I am teaching. If that is the situation, then how do I ensure that my students are engaged? Now, how does it benefit the student? The benefit of student engagement goes beyond the classroom. When I am ensuring that the student is actively participating, contributing, I am giving them an opportunity to be confident. I'm telling them to speak in front of the whole class. I'm helping them to develop their confidence. I'm helping them to work in teams. I'm ensuring that they start taking ownership. So when I assign people tasks, it is very easy for me to make sure that they come out of their shell. We have students coming from different backgrounds. Some of them have had public school experience. Some of them may not have had. Some of them come from very remote parts of the country where education has been just bare minimum. If that is the situation, am I catering to this diverse class that I have? Am I ensuring that they are all participating, or am I only focusing on those handful 5-10 students who are very active in my class? We have to answer these questions. We have to address these questions. So when I look at the benefit student engagement gets, for the student itself, we realize that student engagement is far more beneficial to them as a community than to us as the faculty. For the simple reason, not just that their content, their knowledge is getting addressed, their knowledge is getting enhanced, but also the fact that they are developing their softer skills, which are so very important when they are out for the placement interviews or when they are out interacting with industry. As a class, faculty of BBA, MBA, BCom, whichever subject in management we are taking, whichever program we are taking, we need to understand that all these things are important. And if collectively, all the faculty members are contributing in the development of the student through the student engagement, believe me, your placement rate is going to go up drastically. It cannot be the effort of just one single faculty. It has to be for everyone to collectively contribute, to collectively come forward and say that, yes, student engagement is my responsibility, it is our responsibility, and let's ensure that the student is contributing to his own development in each and every class. In each and every class. How does it benefit me as a faculty? Obviously, I don't want a monologue. 75 minutes of teaching one way is totally frustrating, with no sense of response from any of the students. It obviously gives me a sense of achievement when I have so many people contributing, because I realize, okay, they are not sleeping, they are not just physically present, they are mentally present in my class, and they are alert, active learners, and that is what is the ideal situation for any faculty member. This engagement also helps me to develop a stronger relationship between the student and the faculty, which is very important. If this bond is not created, believe me, how much ever great faculty you are in terms of content, if the students are not connected with you in the class, they will not relate to what you are saying. They will disassociate with you after a while. So there is a question in the chat box regarding engagement in online classes. I will just come to the how part in terms of virtual and offline. We will just talk about it and I'll try and address your query there. Now, as a faculty, if I see that the students are responding to my way of teaching, my teaching ability also improves. My preparedness improves. Why is it important to be prepared? We have already discussed. It is very clear that the more prepared I am, the higher the student engagement in the class. And the higher the student engagement, it is beneficial for both the student and the faculty and the institution on the whole. This kind of engagement also improves and increases the retention of the students, retention of the students' attention span, which is so very important. There are so many researches and statistics which have been done, but on an average in a 75-minute class, the best the student can hold attention is 10 or 15 minutes. Only 10 or 15 minutes. If it's a 50-minute class, it goes down. In schools, it is only 60 seconds. That is just 1 minute. In the college, in the university level, it goes up a little more because the students have a little more sense of maybe responsibility or they are interested in the class. So 15 minutes maximum. How do I address that issue? How do I ensure that if not for 75 minutes whole, how more can I improve the engagement of my students? So let's now discuss how does this work? When I'm talking about student engagement, I need to understand these different levels as well. If I look at positive engagement, the students who are positively engaged in my class will not only attend my lecture, they will participate with enthusiasm. They will have a strong interest in what I'm teaching. And when they are doing their submissions or they are, participating in the class, they will meet or exceed my assignment requirements. This is the general or major kind of engagement that we should aspire for, at least majorly. Why? Because if I have a positively engaged class and by this behavior, by this demonstration, I can actually understand whether the students are engaged with me or not. I don't need to do any survey over and above. This is more than sufficient for me to know whether the students are engaged in my class or not. So my focus should be to begin with positive engagement. Non-engagement is something which we all have to ensure it does not happen ever. It is like a failure for us as a teacher. Whether it is a demonstration that the students are skipping the lecture without any excuse, or they are demonstrating that they are bored, they are shifting, they are fidgeting in the class, or they are submitting late assignments or rushed assignments, or they are not submitting at all. This is all a demonstration of their non-engagement. And this is a sign which we need to work on. This is something, if you have seen in the past, please take it as a learning that if you have seen at any point of time, any of the students demonstrating this, corrective action has to be taken instantly. It has to be taken instantly. Negative engagement, this is a strict no-no. We cannot have this kind of a situation at all. While non-engagement is something which is bad, negative engagement is terrible. In this, a situation will happen when a student could be boycotting the class. They will be encouraging students to disrupt the class. They will be, rejecting you as a teacher. They will not be interested. This person is going to redefine the parameters for assignments in terms that, try to modify it, try to negotiate with you in terms of, the assessment deadlines, the assessments. So there will be a lot of negative action happening here. So when we are talking about student engagement, we also need to know currently, where do I stand? What do I, what do I rate myself? Am I a positively engaged, a perceived person in front of the students, or are they non-engaged with me, or is there a negative engagement? So we have to aspire for a positive engagement. We have to ensure that the non-engagement and negative engagement does not happen at all. The purpose of our teaching then goes off. It does not make any sense if we have a negative or a non-engagement, right? Okay, so now how do we manage this engagement inside the class? I am going to take both the scenarios of virtual as well as offline. Currently, all of us are offline. In fact, had this pandemic not hit us, this session we would be actually having in our campus. But unfortunately, it is not the case. So let us try to understand both the situations in online and offline mode. The first step, what I have always realized, is the class preparation. Class preparation is very important. Before I enter the class, whether it is the online or the offline class, I need to be very well prepared. Then comes dividing my class time. We all have our schedule of 50 minutes, 1 hour, 75 minutes. I have to divide my class. And now I will come to how I divide my class, ideally, which will help you to understand perhaps that this could be a method that you may want to adopt to, which you may want to adapt for yourselves also. So the first thing I do is, in the 75-minute class, the first 2, 3, 4 minutes goes on in breaking the ice with them. Even if I have taught them for so many years or months, it doesn't matter. I still try to break the ice with them in the initial 2, 3 minutes, wherein I am talking in terms of breaking the ice, okay, not only in terms of asking how they are, but also were they able to understand what we did last time? Do they need a repetition, or can we start in the next? There is short conversation. What we have a small talk that happens, so that students don't feel that aate hi padhana shuru kar diya. You started entering and you started teaching. It doesn't work like that. You need to give them time to be settled for your class, whether it is online or offline, both. That can also happen if you are entering your class at least 5 minutes before the commencement. The students who are highly engaged with you will all be there before time. The students who are non-engaged with you will be the ones who will come on time or a little later. And those who are totally negatively engaged, either they will be totally absent or they will come towards the end of the session just to mark their attendance. So preparation of the class begins by that small talk that you want to do. That small talk could be anything. Like, I'll give you an example what small talk I do. I tell them that, okay, do you know last evening or yesterday or this week, we had this company which came for placements, and this question was something which students could not even answer. And this is, or this is how they should have answered. So I gauge on their interest, because placements is a mandate, or companies information, any activity related to organizations is something which the ears of the students goes up tremendously. So I try to talk to them in a language they understand, or I will talk to them something which has recently happened. Maybe yesterday the prime minister of a country changed, or some big event happened, or the IPL final was there, or something which I know will interest the students, if not all, at least some of them, or majorly all of them, whichever. But there is this small talk that needs to be done to get them on track, to get them all their attention. This 3-4 minute conversation is mandatory. At least it has worked for me in the first place. In fact, I'll give you a very small example. I started my teaching career in 2007 January, 16 January, in fact, 2007. And this was my first exposure. 200 students sitting, IP University, University School of Management Studies on campus, the B School of IP University. When I entered the class, I had no experience of teaching. I had left my industry, company almost a year ago, in 2005, August. And January 2007, when I entered the class, I was blank. Blank because I did not know how to conduct the class. But I remember the first thing I did was those 3-4 minutes of breaking the ice with them. They were also meeting me for the first time. I was also meeting them for the first time. I had no idea what I had to teach. I had only looked very brief. And believe me, that was the biggest learning that I had. For the simple reason, the only small talk I did was that, okay, you are all a diverse class. Let's know from which, part of the country you all belong to. It was like an introduction session for me with them. It did not take more than 10 minutes. But when I started talking about my background, when I told them from where I come, what is my, reason for joining the university and coming over and all, it got them interested because I was sharing with them my story. And the moment you do that, you don't have to spend the entire class for that, just 5-6 minutes just to get their attention. It worked for me. And that is a thumb rule which I have followed ever since. I do not enter my class and start teaching immediately. And every day before I enter, I need to know what is that small talk I'm going to do with them that is going to interest them. Once I have their attention, whatever I teach, how much ever time I teach them, they are there with me. That is rule number 1. Number 2, when I'm dividing the class, in my 75-minute class, I don't teach for more than 30 minutes. You'll be thinking that, am I wasting students' time? No. 30 minutes is teaching. The remaining 30-35 minutes that is left, I have told them to do something which they have to do. I have put the ball in their court. How do I do that? I either have a small caselet ready with me. Most of these caselets I create on my own. All these situations I will create on my own depending on the topic. Or I will give them a case study which would have been shared with them one day before. Expecting that 95% will not read them, I still discuss it. Because I have to, it's part of my curriculum, so I will still discuss it. I will send them to breakout rooms. If it is an online class, I will send them to breakout rooms to discuss the case, give each group a question to answer when they come back. And then we discuss the case in totality. Either if it is not a caselet or a case, then I give them an activity. For example, if I'm teaching recruitment, I will tell them to prepare an advertisement. The more attractive an advertisement for you, the better marks you score in your class assessments. And these are all assignments which they will have to, they will be assessed on. Even if it is 2 marks assessment, it's all right. Let them participate, let them contribute, let them think. So my classes will be a mix of individual and group activities. I have so much material lying with me, chart papers, pens, crayons. I tell them to make collages. When I'm teaching them motivation, I tell them take this newspaper, group wise, create a collage, picture collage, which gives the message of motivation. And the way they think, the way their creativity comes out, it is unbelievable. You may think that these are things a student of MBA or a BBA should do. I think so. because I will teach them Maslow's theory, but if they don't know how to apply it, it doesn't make sense. Similarly, if I have to teach training and development, I will tell them how to actually conduct a training and conduct one for them in a 30-minute session. I will make them as trainees. I will become a trainer and tell them, okay, today we will do a training session on team building. So what I'm just trying to say is every subject, every topic can have some activity or the other. Or there could be a reading you may want to discuss, or you may want to discuss a report which you have come across. It could be any way, but believe me, the moment you make students think in your class, you have nailed it. You have nailed the concept of student engagement. Make sure all your learning outcomes are reviewed before every session. It is very tedious. Sometimes we don't even bother. Sometimes we go towards the end, we have finished the syllabus, we finished the module, and then we realize that, oh my God, did I not meet this learning outcome? Now how do I do it? So better than you do it beforehand, it's better that you talk about it a little, you go through it before every class, or at least before every topic, depending on how you have laid them down. The next important thing is about the learning materials. Most of us don't plan ahead. It is a very sad situation. Sometimes we take these learning materials just before we are entering the class. To be fair to students, at least what we have a practice in IILM is that the day the class is starting, the session starting, or before class number 1, my module plan or syllabus, every reading, every case study, every video that I'm going to do during my entire 3 credits or 4 credits paper, everything is uploaded on MS Teams for the students to have a view. They will even have the PPTs. Even I upload all the PPTs beforehand. That look, when I am teaching, don't focus on just the PPT or what, just focus on what I'm saying and what you have to do. So what happens is they are able to relate to the PPT when they would have participated in the classroom. So this learning material, if I'm able to organize and share with the students beforehand, it makes my task as a faculty very, very smooth. Now, the biggest challenge as a faculty that comes is student isolation. But what I mean by isolation is I am focusing only on those handful of students who are participating in my class. I am not focusing on the students who are having totally their non-engagement or negative engagement attitude with me. Because I feel, let it be. If they are not interested, they are not interested. Those who are, I'll focus on that. Unfortunately, if you will see, if majority of your class is a non-engaged mode or in a negative engaged mode, these are also the students who will not get placed. These are also the students who will not be able to enhance their employability. It is a proven fact that a highly engaged student is also the one whose employability chances are the highest, whose employability rates are the highest. And if, as a management faculty, I am only teaching for the purpose of teaching, not for the purpose of making them placed, then I am sorry, we are not doing the right task. While it is fine that I have to teach them, that is my responsibility. But over and above that, I have to make sure that they learn to apply the concept, that they learn to be engaged with me so that they can demonstrate a similar behavior when they are out in front of the recruiters or the companies. A non-responsive and a non-participative student is the one who is going to be a big problem as far as the recruitment is also concerned. In a virtual classroom, I think most of us face this situation. Video, audio off. No response. I don't even know whether you're listening to me. Are you lying down and having your breakfast? Are you in the bed, or are you just lying down and not interested in my class, just logged in only for the purpose of attendance? Virtual class has brought a lot of perils as it has brought a lot of advantages. So let's see, how do I, as a faculty, prepare myself for a virtual classroom? This is how I use the different available tools. These are simple to use and simple to do in the class. I make extensive use of the whiteboard. You can have breakout rooms as the best tool for student engagement because you're giving them an opportunity to interact with each other. You can do readings, you can do role plays, you can do case discussions, you can have situation-based discussions, you can do anything, either in the main classroom or in the breakout rooms. I have done all of these which I have written here. This is nothing which I have not experimented with. Videos are part of every class or session. If not a video, then some reading, some report, some simulation, some role play, some activity. 30 minutes I am teaching, 35 minutes student is learning by hands-on. Chat box is actively used students so that the students can give their responses. And it helps because you know how many are active, how many are responding. I have even gone to the extent that when I am, sending the students in a breakout room, if the student has not accepted the link and he's not going, I actually remove them from the class. You can do that. As the host of the class, you can do that. And you can actually find out how many students are actually listening to you, how many are active and, attentive, and how many are not, participating at all, who have logged in and who have disappeared. So breakout room is actually a must if possible in a class. You can actually guess what is happening as far as the student participation is concerned. Now, this is how my class is generally. In all classes, I cannot use all of them, but in all classes, I use at least one of them. Whether it is simulation, whether it's hands-on activities, whether it is the articles, all these articles, these are available free, downloadable, available resources. These are open resources, whether it's Harvard Business Review articles. So imagine if through a HBR article, you're talking about leadership, you're talking about performance appraisal, you're talking about any topic, the students' interest goes up that, wow, I'm doing a Harvard Business Review article in class. I'm reading a McKinsey report, or I'm reading a McKinsey and Forbes article. Believe me, we underestimate the potential of our students. Whereas if we give them this stimulating, this intellectually stimulating, material to discuss in the class, their IQ, EQ, everything goes up. Because they feel motivated that, wow, we are doing this. It's not rocket science. You may be all doing it, but imagine that is the impact a student gets. Somebody who's not had this kind of exposure in the past, and if he's getting access to this kind of a resource material, your class teaching goes up by several notches. And that is what we need to aspire. We also need to grow as a faculty, right? We also need to improve ourselves. There is a Deloitte report which can be easily available, downloadable. A McKinsey report, downloadable. Please download, use it. I refer to the World Economic Forum reports in almost every alternate class because there is so much to get from them. Role plays are a mandate for me. At least every module, there will be 1 or 2 role plays. And these have to be very carefully thought. Last year, when in March, we started online, I was very skeptical because I have always been a hands-on faculty as far as classes are concerned. And for me to have a student audience which is not even switching on the audio video, it was a big put off. But then I got all those things I was doing in the offline class and made the students do in the online class as well. So what I would do is, like, supposing you may want to have a question, how do I do a role play in an online class? What I would do is that in one class, I will give them the topic, divide them into groups, that what role play topic you have to do. So supposing there is a role play on negotiation they have to do. So what the students will do is, in the next class, they will share the recording, because they are also in the offline mode. They are also sitting in geographically dispersed locations. They will record their role play, their interaction, and they will, share it in the next class. So everyone will see how each and every person and group has interacted with the other. Believe me, when the students beyond the classroom are interacting, coordinating with each other, they are actually working in virtual teams, you are preparing them for the organization ahead. It has worked for me for the last more than 1 year. And I'm sure if you are not doing it now, till now, you can very, very easily do it. Very easily. I mean, I'll give you a small example. I was teaching business negotiation in the last semester from January to May. Business negotiation is a very hands-on practical subject. I mean, I cannot teach the theories there, but the assessment was in the form of a role play. So there were groups of 2 students who had to do a role play on the acquisition of WhatsApp and Facebook. So that transaction, they were supposed to do a role play. I cannot tell you the kind of responses I got. And these were undergraduate students. So when the BBA students were actually doing role plays, recording it and sending it, it was an unbelievable and amazing experience. The kind of discussions that they did, the kind of convincing that they did, the kind of roles that they've got themselves into, absolutely amazing. And believe me, it was very fulfilling as a faculty that I did that as part of their evaluation. So obviously it was an evaluation, so they took it very seriously. But above that, there were students who came out fantastically with respect to all the concepts of negotiation. So this is just a small example that I'm saying, that if I have prepared well for my class, when I know what is the outcome I want to expect after today's class, I am sorted. You can have small caselets which are available on the internet. I'm sure all of you can get access to it. You can modify the cases in case you feel that you cannot, use them as it is. So please, you can change the names and give them something. My classes are conducted. That students are contributing, participating. And the most notorious ones are the ones who come out and they I'm sorry, there was some network issue. So just give me a second. I'm returning back to the slides. Just let me know when it is visible to you. Is the slide visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes,
All right.
yes,
Thank you.
yes,
So any questions here before I move forward? Any
Dr.
questions?
Sona, I have a question. I mean, I just wanted to know your perspective. I had posted this in the chat box as well. My name is Jobin Jacob. So my question is, you had mentioned that you had faced a lot of issues, like when students don't switch on the camera, or there is no, they keep themselves on mute. But the biggest challenge that, I mean, personally, I faced is whenever I ask a couple of students who are frequently keeping their, mics on mute and cameras off, they say that they have network issues. So they drop a mail saying that they have network issues. And many a times, I mean, it could be a genuine case also, but few areas I definitely know that the student is lying. But how do we differentiate that? In such situation, what do you do?
See, this is something which we cannot grapple with actually, because it is very difficult to gauge whether the student is actually telling the truth or not. But if you see that for repeatedly 4 or 5 classes, the same behavior is being demonstrated, then you can obviously pull them up. Tell them that when your video is better, or when your network is better, why don't you record your so you give them a kind of an activity so that they can come back to you and actually show them that they have actually attended your class seriously, or they were very much there. So it is up to you how you want to invoke response from them. Supposing they are mute, or supposing they are off on video also, tell them to write in the chat box, tell them to mail you something. I mean, something or the other you will have to do in order to get response from them. Important thing is that at least those ones who are not responding at all, they revert to you, right? So you will have to pick out ways. See, I always believe that we are the gurus, so we will have to develop a mechanism where they revert. So what I have done is, there were 3-4 students in my class, very notorious, refused to switch on the videos totally. I said, okay, I'm going to have a presentation in the next class. And if supposing this behavior continues, then you get a 0 out of it. And this is going to be directly part of your assessment. Believe me, if the student is interested in his marks, this 0 is going to make him come out of his shell. This is just one way. And it happens. Next class, their audio, video, everything is fine. And they are demonstrating very clearly, giving very, very effective presentation. And I am sitting with my mouth open that, okay, are these the same guys who refuse to switch on their audio, video? And just because I gave them the carrot of the marks. I just give them that carrot, or I tell them that this is going to be counting in your attendance. If you are not having your audio video on, I am not going to mark your attendance. So our students have this fear of attendance because they know they can be debarred, or they can be assessed, at least if not in every class, which can be a genuine case, but at least in 4 or 5 out of 4 or 5, at least one class they must switch it on. Even if it is for, okay, say, okay, for your attendance, switch it on for 1 minute, I need to see you. I just say that I have to become very, very clear that, look, if I don't look at you, I'm going to mark you 0. I have forgotten your face. Switch on your audio and video. I can't even recognize you. So, it is in a lightweight mode. So they know that I'm not very serious at that time. And then they switch it on. I'm okay with that. It's all right. As long as they have at least showed their face, and, at least some action has happened for that moment, it is fine. That's how I would deal with that situation.
All right, Dr. Sona, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Satya. Okay, Mr. Satya, you've raised the hand. Please tell me.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Reading before the class, that becomes a huge challenge. We do not really get students to read case studies and whatever we provide to them earlier. So in that environment, how do you proceed with case studies when you yourself told that 95% of the class has not read it? So is it a big challenge, and what points do you cover?
So what I do is, see, I would have read the case, and 5% would have read the case, right? 95% will read the case in the breakout room. And the way of doing it is that I tell them that this is the question each group will answer. Study on, say, recruitment, for example. So my preparedness for teaching that case will be that I will have adequate questions. as far as the students are concerned, so that every group will be able to answer them, which means that when they go out in the breakout rooms, they discuss it, they come back, and I tell them that every person will speak at least one sentence answering that question, telling what you're learning from the cases. It takes time, but then my case study will take the entire session there.
Okay. So on an average, how much time do
Every
you give, ma'am?
class, if I'm doing a case study, I allocate case study for one full class.
Okay.
So I have 75 minutes. Even if the students are less, more in number, I can very beautifully discuss it because they will discuss it. I will not do anything. Once I've told them that you go in the breakout room, discuss, come back, I'm going to evaluate you on basis your performance and participation and contribution in the case discussion. All of them suddenly become active.
Right.
So that's how I deal with them. So I give them time to read it in the breakout room. It has worked till now.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, Professor Kusum, what would you like to ask?
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Ma'am, I just want to know how you use breakout rooms.
Okay.
Just now you said that you are using for case studies. So do you give same case study to every group or
Yes.
different case studies to different?
No. Same case study to all. See, what happens is I also assume that when they are in breakout rooms, again, one or two students may not do anything there. But when I tell them that each one has to speak, I ensure that they are reading, all of them are at least reading what the crux of the case is, right, in half an hour. So the case is decided basis that they will be able to read it in 25-30 minutes, discuss amongst themselves, and come back and we have a general common classroom discussion. So the case remains the same. It remains the same. And what happens is when we do the end term discussion, at the end of it, I summarize that what was the case all about. So even if a student has read the case partially during that time or only to a certain extent, they are able to understand what the crux of the case is. So my role does not stop even if I'm doing a case study that, okay, I've allocated them in the breakout room, now I'm free. Nothing like that. When they are in the breakout room, I make sure I sneak in and see in every room what they are doing so that, they are not gossiping or anything. So, all that happens. And sometimes I even tell them that make a PPT of 3-4 slides and share what you want to speak. So that makes them even more alert ki PPT bhi banani hai breakout room mein. So, going beyond that verbal discussion, even having PPT preparation in the class itself. So that's how students are able to, be more engaged.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, how much time it takes for this type of activity normally so that we can plan?
So 1 hour is good enough. 1 hour is good enough.
So you give half an hour for preparation and then half an hour for presentation?
Yes. I put about 7 to 8 students in every group, minimum, depending on the class strength. And then when each group has to present, they get about 4 or 5 minutes so that every group gets time to present. Every person would have spoken. And at the end, we get time to even wind up and summarize the case. So in a 75-minute classroom, if there is only a case discussion left, the moment they start joining the class, I have my first 3-4 minutes of ice breaking with them, and then I switch them to send them to the breakout rooms.
Ma'am, every time you keep the same group or you keep changing the group in different?
Every class, it's a different group.
Okay.
Every class, it's a different group.
Yeah.
See, the reason, so supposing in one class, I do only one breakout room activity.
Okay.
Right. So students are different in every class. The reason that is also very consciously done because I want them to interact with diverse people. They break the ice with each other. They start talking to each other. They feel comfortable with different people. If I just give them one standard breakout room throughout every time, then it will not make sense. Then they'll become more naughty and more notorious. So I don't give them that comfort zone in that class.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, ma'am, one more question, please.
Yeah, please.
We teach finance, sometimes income tax and, accounting. In those subjects, pre-reading is a prerequisite. And also understanding what we have taught in the previous class, that's also a prerequisite. And students who are not regular in class, what they do, they attend some classes, miss some classes, and then again come back on some classes. In some classes. So we face a difficulty of continuity. They won't understand anything unless you again go back to explain them what is the method and what is the technique, how it has been applied. So you have to do all these things again. So in those environments, how do you really ensure that students remain engaged? Because when they don't understand, they break away. They do not really
See, generally in finance and accounting, what I would think is that yours is also very practical subject. You have to do those questions also. And I'm sure by now you would have started to use the digital board, the whiteboard to maybe, do those sums.
Yes.
So as a finance or maybe any other faculty who has these analytics papers or these things, it is better that in every class you keep 5-10 minutes initially to revise the whole concept. How you could do that is maybe go through the concept very quickly in the form of that concept or that topic that you wanted them to know about it, because you will even have a challenge that the students who attended the previous class may not be present in this one, and in this class you have an absolutely new set of students who did not have any idea what you've done. So if in the first 5-10-15 minutes you can take your call how much time you want to allocate, you can do that revision so that students come on one level. That is the best way to have them all back, revise also. And it makes sense because you would also be remembering and recalling that what you did and from where you have to take it forward, right? So this is the way which will help if you do a revision. And believe me, 15 minutes worth spending on your
revising
previous class learning is better than having a blank class for the next 50 minutes. That ways. Yes, Professor Krati. Professor Krati, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, ma'am. Very good morning. And I must say that the session is going very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my question is that, ma'am, simulation activities, can you give some idea what kind of activities that we can take? Because as for suppose I'm taking entrepreneurship management. So what kinds of simulation or hands-on activities that I can plan for my students?
In fact, you will be happy to know that we will be having a simulation during the next 2 days. One of the days you have simulation also. So you will be actually as a participant attending that simulation session. So you will know, and it's I think on entrepreneurship only. So that will help you immensely. But simulation is something which requires software, which requires you to have prepared material for the students. It is not that it happens just like that. So there are some free simulations which are available on the internet. I think there is one MIT simulation on clean tech, which is majorly on HR, but it's a mix of other functions also. So I can share the link with all of you in the WhatsApp group that we have, so that you can have a look at it and you can do it. But then practice it beforehand, because it is a simulation. It's a real world situation which is in the software. So if you would have gone through it yourself many times, it will help you, because students will have different scenarios. You will be able to then answer their queries easily. But these simulations should be done once A, you have the free software with you, B, you are confident about using it, and C, you are able to relate the concept, whatever you want to teach, through that. While simulation is a great tool, and we all recommend that every subject should have at least one simulation, or you can have one simulation which covers almost all the aspects of business, maybe marketing, HR, finance, operations, technology, every kind of a decision a student has to take. So that kind of simulation, if the institution can arrange, nothing like it. I'll share the links that I have on the group. You can have a look at it. So one clean tech is something which is very, very popular, very common, and it's an MIT simulation which can be used. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Professor Uday, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, ma'am. And a simple question is that normally you say that PPT is a strictly no in the classroom. You should not go to the PPT, right? But the problem is that the normal when we send some material to a student beforehand, just to go through the conceptual framework, to go through the concepts, right? So to be very honest, students don't put much attention to the material that we study in Google Classroom or on different platform. And normally, if we have a class of 55 minutes, right? So the majority of the time goes nicely to explain the concepts to the students only. And then again, here is the role of PPT that we have to take help with. So how we can make sure that the students should read at least some concept beforehand, so that we can move to the next level of case studies and different types. Of course, in every these schools, now still the faculty and students are still stuck up at the level 1 only. Only how to make the students clear about the conceptual knowledge, and not about these articles and hands-on activities. If you can throw some light there.
What you're asking is absolutely right, relevant, and it relates to almost every one of us. See, when I say don't use PPT at all, I'm using a PPT right now, right? My interest in a PPT is only when I'm not reading from it. If it's a strict no, if I'm not reading word by word from it. Students feel very disassociated, disengaged if I'm reading completely word by word. I don't have to do that. But I need the PPT, even if it's a 30-minute class that I'm taking, wherein I'm telling them the concepts. See, we cannot do away with the fact that concepts we have to teach. There is no denial about it. But the application is equally important. So, when I teach with PPT, I'm not saying that, but I don't read from the PPT. When I have the PPT, there will be strict bullet points which I will elaborate, where I will give examples, where I will tell them how they relate to their real life. That makes it click with them. But if I don't have the PPT, supposing I just stop using the slide and I'm only talking, I will not be able to catch your attention at all, because the students need something to focus on. If I have a slide, even if it's a picture, and I spend my entire class on that picture, at least they have something they are looking at except my face. So a PPT is required only to the extent that you are able to catch their attention. So don't have too much text, don't have paragraphs, don't read from it. I have PPTs which are for two types, one used in class, one for the student reference. Student reference are full of content. I don't expect them to read before the class. I don't even expect them to read before the exam. I'm okay with that. But the ones which I have in the class are the ones which are the bullet points, which ensure that there are full of examples, which are done with the objective that students are listening to me, they're understanding what I'm saying. If I just put one word, student will not be able to understand it till he listens to what I'm trying to say through it. So my objective is to have very pictorial, very colorful slides, very less in content, more of my verbal content is there. So then students are able to listen, they are able to engage, they are attentive, because they'll think, "Arey, isme to kuch hai hi nahi, so I have to listen why ma'am has put these words." So in that way, I have realized that students find themselves to be more attentive when PPT is going on, but it doesn't reveal every content. Otherwise, they'll say, "Ma'am, ye PPT aap upload kar do. Why are you wasting our time?" Students these days are so vocal that they are saying that, "Can I skip the class? You're doing this PPT only." Right? So PPT, I'm not saying that do away totally. My strict no to a PPT is where too much content and reading it aloud. That we should not do. That is a waste of the student's time and my time. I'll also
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes.
Am I audible to you?
Yes,
ma'am, actually, there are different types of subjects. Okay?
Yes.
One is the practical subject like finance. Okay? Other is a subject like HRM, where you have much more scope of doing activities and all like marketing. And but if what if we are teaching a subject like a law or a corporate governance, where you have the actual facts which need to be put before the student? You can't manipulate anything. So you have to put the like we are teaching the sections. So we have to put the entire section in the PPT. In that case.
Yeah. See, there is no denial. See, every subject, whether you are a law faculty, you are a finance faculty, you will not deviate from your, what we call as your basics. They have to be done. I am talking more about the, the delivery. My focus is right now on the delivery. When I would teach, for example, if I would teach law to a student, I will give them examples. I will give them the, the after maybe the consequences of it, or I will. My purpose is to tell you that even if it's a very boring, so-called boring subject, that is where we have to think how to make it interesting. You get some examples, you get how you can relate it. So for example, you may have so many sections, so many laws, criminal law, for example, right? It has the CPC or whatever you have. I may not know all of them or any of them. In
Companies Act.
Companies Act is there. So there are so many aspects which you can talk to them, which they will immediately relate to. So you can talk to them that, look, if you're planning to start your own venture, you're planning to become an entrepreneur, which kind of act will be applicable to you, which kind of laws you have to follow. Supposing you want to start your own startup, then what will happen to you? So the laws remain the same, but you are teaching them to apply it by giving them, throwing back the same examples that they will use when they start working or they start on their own. So even if supposing it's a person who wants to practice law, you may be teaching a BBA, BA, LLB student. Even in that case, you tell them that, okay, you may start practicing it. You may start becoming a practitioner. Do you know how to register your own firm? These are the steps. This is how the problems you will face. So, you will have to go beyond your typical textbook or that big fat book of the taxes or the big fat book of the laws. You will have to make it more interesting. Give them examples, give them stories. The more practical, the more story you give, and you will get them all on that indianqanun.com and those kind of websites. You will give them, don't take the exact names, give them the situations in which the government or the jury was, or the judiciary was compelled to take out these acts or things like that. We will have to do a lot of research in whichever subject we are doing to get hold of it, right? Even if you're teaching law, if you do HBR law or HBR legal amendment or something, you will get a lot of articles. Even if you are discussing an HBR article related to law, for example, your child's day is made. Otherwise, he would have never been able to think that somebody at an international level is writing so very well, and you can relate to it. So I'm just giving you an example that there are so many things you can do, but then prerequisite is, are you ready to spend that kind of time and effort on each and every class and topic for you? That is the most important thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Satya.
Ma'am, just to substantiate or just to complement your thoughts about law teaching, I would just like to tell Madam Sweta that we can also give them assignments like drafting of memorandum of association, drafting of articles of association. We can also design some small moot problems which will be involving various sections of the Companies Act or Income Tax Act or whatever. In that way, and we also give to our students in the National Law University here, we also give to our students a lot of cases, live cases, which have to do with, let's say, one aspect of Companies Act, maybe the frauds aspect. So we will give them some, live case like Satyam's case, and tell them to identify which sections have been applied by the courts by reading the cases. So in that way, it becomes very, very enriching and interesting to do legal discussions.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Now, what I'm going to show to you is a video. It's a Harvard classroom. I found it very interesting, and we'll quickly discuss what were your learnings from it. So just give me a second. Let me know if you are able to have a look at it. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. It is visible.
Today, we put ourselves in the shoes of Cynthia Carroll. Imagine you've become CEO of one of the world's...
Is it audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it is audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
largest mining companies, Anglo-American. $25 billion in sales, 162,000 employees, 2/3 of them in South Africa, and 4 months into your job, you hear the news. One of the miners in Rustenburg has lost his life. Yet another fatality. You have to decide, are you going to shut down the mine or continue business as usual? David, if you can open for us today. You're Cynthia Carroll. The news comes to you. Do you shut down the mine in Rustenburg? Yes or no? What are you going to do?
So I think she needs to initiate very detailed investigations into what happened in these circumstances and then what has happened throughout the past.
Are you going to shut down or not shut down?
So I'm going to do a detailed investigation. And then when I do have a plan.
What are you learning? What are you learning in this investigation?
Practices that are not being followed correctly or out of line or could be safer where there's like issues.
People are dying. It's not safe. What evidence are you looking for?
When you get the opportunity to participate, you need to be able to compact the information that you're going to present in a very concise and clear manner. Through participation in class every day, this is something that I am trying to sharpen.
Who wants to get in on this?
It's dynamic, it's fast-paced, there's a ton of energy. Everyone's really excited to jump in and contribute.
I learn a lot from my peers as much as I learn from the faculty, if not more. The professor kind of facilitates. It's like an orchestra. They kind of direct the music, but they're not necessarily playing it.
I think we need to shut it down. Minor deaths are accepted as just a part of the process of mining. Shutting down the operation will signal a very strong mentality shift that deaths aren't going to be tolerated.
That's called a bold stroke, by the way. What Grant is talking about, what Izosa is talking about, what Robert is talking about is a bold stroke, which means from this day forward, something has shifted. But those of you who disagree, say what? Those of you who disagree, say what, Will?
I think we do much more if we improve the culture around safety in the entire organization.
There's some truth that we're trying to work toward. The debates become more and more fun because that's when you get to uncover views that you hadn't thought of and when you get to push your own thinking and hopefully make your own thinking much, much better.
If you allow your perspective to be constructively challenged by other people, then it is just fascinating how your position and your perspective can shift.
Those of you who want to shut down, how do you respond to this? Layla.
We shut down the plant because we had safety issues, and we made a stand, and we started making a safety culture, like we had a safety. The fact that we can have difficult, uncomfortable conversations, we can talk about race, we can talk about politics, and still be friends at the end of the day. And to have people who are not from a specific group, but still have sympathy and empathy is pretty unique.
Beyond cultural and beyond structural, we also talk about just the people of the organization. The overseers are generally white and the workers are generally black. The language which they communicate is called Finagolo, and it's largely a command and control language.
So you're saying some structural, you're saying some linguistic communication barriers, you're saying some organization cultural issues around the entire organization.
I think the case method also gives you humility. Your perspective is not enough to figure out the answer to a question, and actually gives you the ability to ask other people what their perspective is.
So there's 27 countries represented in our section of 94 people. And because of the way that the case method is structured, we can sort of get underneath what are those differences really tied to. You know, are there cultural things about where you come from that makes the business world operate slightly differently? And are there things that we can learn from those differences?
I think consumers are critical here. So not only do they care about having high quality inputs to their supply chains on time, but they will also care about safety.
In the first month or couple weeks of class, I was hesitant to participate, but over time, I've gotten rid of all of my barriers and don't really have any qualms about participating. But a lot of that is because of the support of my classmates. And not only do I see it changing in myself, but I see my classmates making better points over time, which then also, again, pushes me to be better.
Stakeholder analysis is so important when we think about change. So important to do. We think about who do we need to worry about and what do they care about? What are their interests? And so you start there, but that's not enough. You have to then say, where do I need to invest the most time? Who is in this cell? The board.
I'm really worried about the managers.
I think the government's also key in here.
Being in the case setting, you realize how valuable everyone else around you is and how valuable their opinions are, and the importance of being a really good active listener.
So before we shift from this and think about some action planning, I just want to show of hands, because it's not clear to me in this room, how many of you are shutting down? Really? And how many of you are not shutting down? So most of you are not shutting down. Wow. So are we going to resolve this now, or are there points that we need to make?
I don't know if I think this is a performance gap. I don't know if this is about best practices. To me, this is about culture. If all these minors were like white and not black, I think the death rates would look very, very differently, because I think people would consider the value of the lives of the people in the mine very differently. The question we have to ask is this company extracting more value from the community than it's providing?
It's scary to be vulnerable in a working world, so you're oftentimes taught to put up a shield. But here, you're given an environment that supports you to take those risks and actually celebrates failures or celebrates diversity of thought when you don't agree with someone.
Jumping into the arena, using your brain to come to the best hypothesis and conclusion that you can given the data that you have, is a task that leaders have to do every day. And how do you use limited information to make a decision and do that in a way that forces you to flex that muscle of dealing with ambiguity?
They don't get it. Jake.
Yeah, and dragging it back up from the front line to the CEO position, one of the things that I was thinking about is not just all of these different elements that we should be considering in terms of safety, but also the leadership capability of Cynthia herself. You reliably took positions at your previous company that were incredibly unpopular and encountered all sorts of resistance. And I think this is a case where you've shown that you can do it, and so I would shut down the company.
The situation is different, don't you think? Is she suited for this job? Can she do this?
I think that's an incredibly challenging question.
That's what we do, Jake. This is what we do. This is what we do.
We push students to take a position or to take a stand because it forces students to think deeply, to think about risks, to think about the weaknesses in their ideas, and to also be open to influence. I want them to set high standards for themselves. I want them to be challenged. I want them to challenge others.
So what really brought was that I wanted to skills that I developed with business skills. But once I got here, those priorities completely changed. What inspires me now is really the having super engaging discussions with my peers. I don't think that I've ever been that intellectually stimulated on a day-to-day basis as I am here. And I think for me, that's inspiring, and it just wakes me up every day with excitement. I think I recognized that I wasn't pushing myself to think differently or to lead differently. I wasn't going to do anything extraordinary. And I thought maybe if I came here, I would be pushed in a way that would lead me to develop into someone who could change something. at HBS. There's just no one here who wants to come out the same way they came in, and that's really exciting.
30 years ago, Cynthia Carroll, 30 years ago, was actually in your seats, in these exact same seats. And because of her, thousands and thousands of minors in the world are paid better, are much safer, and are leading better lives with much more dignity. One day, not only that could be you, I know that one day it will be you.
All right. So, were you able to maybe have an experience of a Harvard case discussion? Any feedback? I'm going to open the whiteboard right now, and I'm going to write your feedback here. Tell me, what was your learning from this video?
The way she was engaging the students, bringing out their perspectives and not discouraging them. That was a learning. Wonderful.
Okay. Not discouraging.
Respect for everybody's opinion.
Okay.
She
What else?
she allowed the views, outflow views of all the students and let them come out, whatever they think for the situation.
Allow
She did not, she did not
was not-
restrict anyone.
She was not being judgmental or evaluative when they were kind of coming out with their ideas.
And because of that, it also motivates them to have go for critical thinking.
Engaging students in lateral thinking.
Also like motivating everyone to participate.
Of humor, not too serious.
So lateral thinking.
Wants everyone to take stand.
At the same time, when she was making sure that she is valuing other people's opinion, but she did not forget that she is more keen towards making the concept more clear to the students. So, she has valued others' opinion. At the same time, she has also made her opinion very clear.
Correct. Also, every thought and every perspective is different, which actually gives a new insight every time somebody says or expresses their views.
Right.
So jotting down the perspectives of everyone on the board as you have been doing it.
Yes. What else? There was something very different about this video, which I want you to talk about.
It is
Something we
again
are
that
missing.
super engagement can inspire to think differently and even force the people who are not involved initially.
Yes. What else? What about her body language?
More interactive.
Yes, please. Yes, Anamika.
Very high energy participation.
She was enthusiastic, and even at times the students, she was been pointing out by names also, and trying to make them engage to participate.
And she was very funny.
Okay.
Learning
What
by
else?
participating.
Sorry.
Learning by participating.
Learning by participating. Did you see her body language? The way she was all over the class.
Yes, ma'am. She was very active throughout the case.
In fact,
trying to move in all the corners, right? Active involvement was being there as a faculty also, like she was.
Yes.
Ma'am, she hardly gave any chance to the students to divert their attention. She pulled their attention towards the case. There's no chance of any diversion of any student.
Right.
Good hold in the class towards all the students.
Her voice modulation and body languages were creating attention of the student.
Absolutely.
Making them very attentive in the class.
Absolutely. You have all put it on, you've just nailed it. All of you have been able to understand. And the reason I included this video was because her energy, her body language, all was amazing. There was not a single student who could ignore her presence. And that is exactly what we have to strive for. If I'm sitting in a class of, irrespective of the number of students, their attention has to be totally on me. They cannot get distracted. And that is my objective. If I do that, they are engaged. They automatically become engaged because they will not only participate, they will contribute, they will give me the responses I'm looking for. And that is exactly my job. See, she does not use a single theory. She did not explain a single concept in a theoretical form that, XYZ was saying this is what Maslow's theory is, or this is what this researcher said. She did not say that. She was invoking responses from the participants. Every student's body language, you realized, they were all upright, all sitting in front. Their name tags were there. So the faculty did not have to take stress of remembering the names. At the same time, what was happening is she was able to connect with the students in a way maybe all of us need to learn from. And that is where, our objective of student engagement is, that it is not as difficult. It is not difficult, but the preparation is something which we need to focus on. That is exactly what I learned from this video, and I thought it's a beautiful one to share with you, very apt to share in today's session. I'll share the links of all of them with you shortly, so don't have to worry or anything about that, right? Now, while I had a couple of other things to do, what I'm going to talk about right now in for just 2-3 minutes is, while we have a classroom where we now know where and how we can be engaged with the students, one thing I want to also focus on is that there is a concept of coaching and mentoring which many of the institutions have started following. People have started incorporating it in their own institutions. And it is not inside the classroom, but outside. So in this, engagement, if we are able to connect with the students inside the class, nothing like it. But what is important is that outside, there must be some element of connection, communication with the students. And I certainly feel, having spent around 4 years in IILM, coaching and mentoring has tremendously helped the students. Whether it is professional, whether it is academic, whether it is, personal front. If you are able to guide them, mentor them, counsel them, help them in any way possible, which can make them better human beings, better professionals, better, in terms of their knowledge, I think our job is done. So inside and outside the classroom is fine. But what is important is that we are also connecting them with them as coaches, as mentors. We can call it any way. We can call it anything. But if we are able to do so, we will be able to have a better connection with them. Right. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the next couple of slides. I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. So I'm going to explain you a small activity, which I want all of you to do. You're around 110 odd, participants in this session. So I'm going to divide you equally, and let's see what is the outcome of it. So are you all ready? Please raise your hands. Use the reaction button and tell me you are all ready. Great. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 9, 10. Okay. I think all of you can, raise your hands, because you all have to do it. There is no second way to it. All right. I'm not spending time on this one right now. This PPT will be available to you. I would rather have you do that activity together and network also. It will be pretty interesting. So just flipping through these slides, you are all aware of them. What is a hybrid classroom? What is a flipped classroom? What is a full virtual classroom? And we've just discussed about coaching and mentoring. These are the links for the videos which you can refer to. These are some very interesting videos on student engagement, and they will give you different perspectives. I'm coming now to the activity that you have to do. So I'm going to send you into groups. You will have to create a class on any of these topics. So room 1 will take ethics, room 2 will take leadership, room 3 will take strategy, room 4 will take communication, and room 5 will take critical thinking. These are all general subjects. These are not specific to HR, marketing, finance, nothing. These are general management subjects topics which I've taken. Please prepare a 1-hour class schedule, how you would like to engage a class on ethics, how would you like to engage a class on leadership, on strategy, communication, and critical thinking. So I will write these topics also in the chat so that you can all have a look at it. And we will meet in another 15 minutes. So are you all ready? Should I send you to the breakout rooms? So you will be roughly about 20 participants in a room. It will also give you an idea as to how, when it's a large number of students, how you can manage or how you can, conduct yourselves. Let's meet in another 15 minutes, and all of you can come up with whatever you have discussed amongst yourselves. The link is being shared here. You can take a screenshot of this slide particularly, and otherwise, 5 rooms, 5 topics. So room 1 goes for ethics, room 2 leadership, room 3 strategy, room 4 communication, room 5 critical thinking. I will write this on the chat also. And if you want to take a screenshot, do this, then I can stop sharing. And please proceed to the breakout rooms. If you will not proceed, I will understand you are not active in my class. So please.
Ma'am, can you give us a choice on the topic or area that we can go?
No, sir. No, not at all. That is the beauty of the game, that we do not get a choice. Most of the times we don't give choice to our students. So I'm
just because some things might be our area of expertise, something may not be.
I understand, but let's go out of our comfort zone today.
Yeah, and there's an entire team and people are from diverse areas, so they can contribute. And plus, you have to prepare a teaching plan rather than actually going and teaching, and then you have to present that plan. So it would be interesting.
Please proceed to the breakout rooms, all of you. I will just share this message on the chat also. And you have only 15 minutes, so a lot of discussion. "55 participants left. Please proceed to the breakout room." Those who were disconnected, I have again reassigned the rooms to you. So please proceed. All right, Shipra, Dipali, Dr. Sharad, Arpit, Anandan, Kiran, Swati, Ashwani, Sugandha, Jeswini, Naz, Ansi, Aditi, Parmeshwara, Gayatri, Mohammed, Dinesh, Archana. Please proceed to the breakout rooms. All of you, please leave for the class, for the breakout room. Please leave for the breakout room. Dr. Bhupinder, Dr. Professor Nayan, Shalini, Professor Manjunath, Professor Preeti, Khushbu, Sanjay, Dr. Sharma, Pooja, Neeraj, Madhavi Lata, Dr. Ipsita, Nilima, Manoj, Professor Anil, Chetan, Robert, Tushar, Pratibha. Please proceed to the breakout rooms. I'll have to otherwise remove you from the class. Professor Anil, were you assigned to any room earlier? Rituparna, were you in a particular room? Ritu?
अच्छा अच्छा
So the breakout rooms are about to be over. Everybody will be back now in the main room. I think everybody is back. All right. So first of all, how was your experience?
Wonderful.
Nice.
It was good, ma'am.
It was very good, ma'am.
It was great, ma'am.
We have learned a lot.
Full of
Pretty
learning.
engaging.
The discussion makes you learn a lot.
Great. So I think as participants in a session, when you are in a breakout room and you find it exciting, imagine students will find it even more exciting to be in that closed room with nobody to, even look at them and they can chat. Sometimes, the students ask me, ma'am, I hope you're not recording our breakout room chats. So that is one on the lighter side. But I'm glad that you did have a good time there. So let's see the outcome. How would you like to share it? Would you like to present it group wise? So room number 1, how do you intend to present your session plan?
So no, we discussed like what is we decided like this, that is we will explain the term, define the term ethics, that is whether be it in the workplace or in the business as such, and then we would like to show them a small video which is explaining the different aspects of ethics. Then we moved on to some case studies wherein you can show them the bad practices in advertising, where they have misled the audience regarding the products they are having. So the examples were we discussed were the Maggie one and the Maggie one, which was there in the news just a few years back because of the lead content. And then we discussed about the White Hat Junior coding advertisement, which was there by the Galgi shop, which talks about coding is necessary for all children to start with. So some advertisements like that. Then we moved on to the difference between the legality, morality, and then ethics, and the best practices of ethics. And then we throw the discussion to the children's side, that is we talked about how they can contribute, and then general group discussions, and then their practice, their experiences in business ethics and what they think about business ethics. So, and then a general feedback from the students and a conclusion. So that's what we discussed, how to develop that 1 hour.
So, right. So if I was supposed to ask you to prepare a plan in which, you write down that within 1 hour, how much are you going to focus on which aspect? So what would it be? Divide it into 1 hour. How much of concept sharing, how much of examples, how would you do that?
So when we divide into 1 hour, so the first 5 minutes is 5 to 10 minutes is introducing this the topics, and then we have that the video, which is again a 10 minutes video.
Yeah.
And then the next 20 to 25 minutes we will be discussing the various case studies, where we are mainly focusing on the unethical practices in business and in workplace. Introduction of the subject. Then we are having another 20 minutes discussion from the student side, where they will their exercises and their practices, and then there is a discussion about the difference between legality, morality, and ethics, and a winding.
All right. Okay. Good. So we will maybe take it a little forward in terms of the feedback once we've got from every room.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Let's all hear to each and every one. Okay, let's go to room number 2.
I think, first of all, madam, it was a very great experience. In group 2, we were given leadership. So it's a very interesting topic that was given to us. So we planned it out in this way. We'll begin with a video that is a small clip of Chak De India, and we'll relate it to the Olympics, which are going to be recently held. So after that small video, we will tell them to identify the leadership style portrayed by Shahrukh Khan in that particular film. So that is going to be the first activity. Then we will explain them various theories of leadership, various qualities of leader. After they have identified what kind of leadership has Shahrukh Khan displayed in that particular film. And then we'll go ahead and do a role play of about 10 minutes, in which we will tell them to identify who is the natural leader in that particular group. So we will give them some assignments or some questions through which, from their opinions, they will themselves vote out as to who is the natural leader in that particular group. After that, we'll tell them some new models like VUCA, that is volatility, uncertainty, challenge, and ambiguity model, in which we will pose 4 questions to them on what will be their response in the time of volatility, in the time of uncertainty, challenge, and ambiguity. And then we will actually bring a case of Tech Mahindra Satyam as to how, after the company was hit by a scam, how Anand Mahindra actually dared to take that company over, and how it turned it around into a good company. So that we will pose to them. And there also we will identify several issues, like issues of employment of several hundreds of thousands of people, and we'll also identify the interest of stakeholders, how a leader has to take care of the interest of stakeholders. In that way we'll do. And then at the end we will leave them with a question as to whether a leader is born or made, and we'll also give them an activity to find out what is their own leadership style. So this is how we have planned it out.
Okay. So all this will be done in 1 hour?
Yes, ma'am. We'll focus on the case study and role play more. So 15 minutes to both, and theory about 10 minutes. We'll cover the leadership styles.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. Fine. All right. Room number 3. Yes, please. Room number 3.
Ma'am, first we will devote 5 minutes.
Tell your topic once. Can you just tell your topic once? Strategy. Yes. So you can tell me minute by minute, how do you intend to do? Yeah.
Devote for ice breaking.
Okay.
Next 5 minutes recapitulation of previous class topics.
Yeah.
Next will be case study introduction for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Then discussion on the case for 30 minutes.
Okay.
And last 10 minutes, peer group assessment.
All right. Fine. Anything else?
No, ma'am. We discussed on these 5 points.
Sure. Fine. Thank you. Next group. Group number 4. Somebody from group 4 can please come forward. This is communication, right? Anyone?
Yes, this is communication.
Yeah, please tell me.
All right. So the topic for us was communication, right? And so we discussed few objectives where we settled with 3 objectives. Very first is the basics of communication, right? Then taking forward with the students will know their communication style, and coming up to the communication barriers. Now, how we will do this? So we have divided time as per this. Now, first we'll be starting with the ice breaking session. So ice breaking session will be of 10 minutes where students can express, where students can express and introduce themselves by adding an adjective to their name. For example, my name is Himanshi. So if I add one adjective where I say, so I am honest Himanshi, right? So here students all across whosoever they're coming, they'll be able to know their personality trait by just one adjective, right? And also who are students who are very introvert or not able to speak, they don't want to express themselves. So maybe they will also get motivated, they can also speak. Then coming to the second objective, that was activity. We'll do the activity of which will take 20 minutes. Doing by the Chinese whisper is the activity name. Now, where students have to add a word or a sentence to the other person, and those other person don't know. So after this, we'll discuss the outcomes and their learnings from this activity, which includes the communication barriers altogether. So this is how we have planned the 1 hour session for the communication.
All right, fine. That's okay. Great. So the last room can talk about critical thinking.
Yes, good morning. I'm Dr. Purvi. I've put my details in the chat also. So first we are going to have ice-breaking session of 3 minutes.
Okay.
And which we could be a just chit chat or recent something where critical thinking was involved without letting them know that we are talking about critical thinking. And the second would be a recap of critical thinking concept, which were discussed in the last class, where we were just talking about what critical thinking means. That would be just 2 minutes recap, just whatever theories or concept we had discussed. The third most important part would be interactive teaching through YouTube video, and where we would invite students to share their personal experiences where they had an experience of critical thinking, where they involved critical thinking.
Okay.
And
Next
next
will
would
be for how much?
That would be 20 minutes.
All right.
And a case study discussion. The case study has already been given to them to read and discuss. So this would be 15 minutes, where we discuss a sudden labor strike at a factory due to workers' death. So that would be 15 minutes.
So this is pre-shared, right? Pre-shared before the class. All right.
And
Fine.
next would be a GD and debate session, group discussion and debate session for 15 minutes, where the roles have been given to students. So managerial roles, somebody would be a CEO, and because there is a labor strike, so where there would be other different roles of HR, manager, and everything.
So roles assigned before the class, during the class?
No, with the before the class. And that could be with a breakout room. First, we were thinking that we will have a GD with breakout rooms. And later on, we will be giving them 7 to 8 minutes for GD, where they discuss with their group. And then there would be debate among the managers. It will be open to everybody, which will be open to all the class. So that is how we want the last thing to add. And then conclusion for 5 minutes.
Okay. Fine. So you've all now actually racked your brains together with different faculty from different backgrounds, subjects, teaching, a common general management subject. Now, while it is true that getting this kind of brainstorming done is easy, the trouble will start when you're actually going to implement it in your what do we call as in your classroom, actually before you enter the class. So what I would like to suggest here is, as part of the learning and as a conclusion for the whole session, that while you have understood the concept, I'm hoping that you will be able to make your class more interesting, more engaging. We don't have to forget that we have to complete the syllabus also. We have to make note of all these activities in the class. Maybe you don't want to do everything in one class. You can spread it. So while some of you wanted to do a case study, a role play, it's all right. Do it in different classes. If you do everything in one class, then you will not be able to finish and achieve your learning outcome. So it's going to become extremely, difficult in that sense. So what one, feedback I would have to give to all of you is that you are all on the right track. It's absolutely fine. This is exactly how classes have to be taken. However, we have to keep in mind that the pace of the syllabus is kept, number one. And number two, please don't make it full on activity based in one class itself. You can think about it. Maybe in one topic, a role play works. Maybe in that topic, a case study doesn't work. So you can, you have these tools, you have these ideas, so you can plan all your classes in advance based on the inputs that have been received, right? And on this note, I would like to end this session. Thank you so much for being such a patient audience. If you have any questions, we can quickly take them up. You can unmute yourself and please let me know. Any question, any feedback, anything you want to share, please feel free to do so.
Ma'am, this is Dr. Purvi. Wonderful session. Regarding case study, is it the way you have shown or the way we usually do is obviously interacting with the student? So is there any tool apart from normal discussion, one-to-one discussion for case study?
There is no tool as such. See, case itself is a situation. So either you share it beforehand and then you know that they may not be actually, reading it before, correct? Second, if you give them there, then you have to keep that entire session dedicated for the case. Otherwise, discussion will not happen. You will have to very intelligently weave in the concepts while you're discussing. Supposing you would want to discuss a concept also while talking about the case, it is perfectly fine. So what is important is weave in the concepts while you are discussing in your conclusion that we did this case because of this objective. It is linked to this theory. It is applied from this concept. So, when you do that, then you achieve that dual purpose. And see, students in management education, they expect case studies. They know for sure that our teachers are going to take case studies because that is how they expect management education, irrespective of the subject. It doesn't matter. It is up to us how much effort are we taking. So ideally, in a module that I take for 3 credits, wherein there are 24 sessions, I will have minimum 3 case studies for the entire subject. So if it is a course on human resource management for MBA year 1 students, there will be minimum 3 case studies on different topics. One will be on recruitment, one will be on compensation, another on labor laws or trade unions. So depending on where you want the students to apply their knowledge, where you want them to have, where you think it's going to be interesting debate, discussion, you can rope in any activity you want to, any case study you want to. And best is, please develop your own caselets. That helps a lot. You may have read some case study. For example, we read about Kingfisher and Malia and all the fraud that he's done. We may not want to develop an entire case about him, but we can discuss a small caselet as to how ethics, governance, transparency, all that is important. Very small caselet where discussion is more. Reading material for them may be a little less so that they don't feel very irritated or stressed with so much reading content, but discussion is very healthy. So that you can do. You can also share a pre-reading before the class if somebody wants to read it. So that also can be done. So there is no typical tool as such. You have to experiment what will click with your audience, what will click with your students. So that can be done.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll quickly wind up here. Thank you very much. And my name is Sona, not Sony. So you can make note of that in the chat. I think some of you written that. I like to be called from my name itself. So thank you very much. And over to you, Dr. Saima.
Thank you, Dr. Sona, for your enriching session. And I hope our participants must have benefited from and they would look forward to implement it in their classroom. Great. So thank you for joining.
Thank you.
So we'll be starting our next session. The external guest is about to join. So he'll take another 2 minutes to join.
Saima, Dr. Nehru is right there in the class. He's there in the session.
Is there in the class?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we will start the session then. So welcome to session 2 of the faculty development program, which is on innovative ways of student engagement. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I have the privilege to welcome Mr. Raj Nehru, who is one of the youngest founding vice chancellor in the country. He He has been appointed as the Vice Chancellor of Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, Government of Haryana, the first skill university in India and sixth in the world. He has been appointed as the Director on the Board of Haryana State Electronics Development Corporation Limited by Governor of Haryana. University Grant Commission has appointed him a member on the Formation of Implementation Plan for National Education Policy 2020. He has been nominated as a member of Advisory Council of Policy Research Foundation for Life by National Executive Committee of the Foundation, a veteran in human capital management, and has spent more than 2 decades in various roles and different organizations. Started his career with Indian Army and then moved on to corporate sector, which includes diverse sectors like pharma, IT and ITS, manufacturing, automobile, and energy. He has worked for more than a decade with IBM and managed global portfolio as Director Leadership Development. Prior to joining Skill University, he was Director HR at Schneider Electric. He has wide global and cross-cultural experience and has worked in Philippines, China, Europe, and United States for his projects. He is on the board and committee of various organizations, including AICT, UGC, MSD, Jammu Central University, NASCOM sector, Skill Council, to name a few. He is also a member on the steering committee under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana by Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Recently, he is appointed as Member Secretary for Skilling and Education Task Group by Administrative Reforms Department, Government of Haryana. He is a recipient of several awards like Innovative Leader Award and Neelkant Samman 2019. He has also received Hall of Fame Skill Leadership Award 2020. Recently, he has been honored with the Most Inspiring Vice Chancellor Award by Golden Aim Conference and Awards for Excellence and Leadership in Education. He's an active philanthropist and is founder of Utsav Foundation. This foundation educates and skills underprivileged children from slums. Currently, this foundation has adopted 2 slums and 80 children. He received a special commendation from state government and PMO office for his contribution towards disaster hit village Sadal in J&K. So welcome, sir. We are honored to have you here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations to Professor Sujata ji for organizing this brilliant event. I was going through the entire program modules that you have arranged. Perhaps I was traveling. I didn't realize that I have to conduct a full session, but then I called Saima ji in the morning and requested her that I will specifically focus for some brief time and then we'll open it for inter-participant discussion in some way. So I'll make it a little extempore. And I went through the entire Word doc that you had shared. It's really brilliantly designed and focused on very important topics, especially the one that we are discussing today. So once again, thank you to all the faculties and deans who have given me this opportunity to come and speak on this important topic. So when I was looking at this topic, student engagement, innovation and innovative practices or methods in student engagement, I was reflecting on while I was traveling back to Gurgaon yesterday, and it made me to become a little nostalgic. I was thinking of those days when I was a small kid, some 4 or 5 year old kid, and I was admitted to a school. I remember the school's name was National School in Srinagar, and my dad would hold my hand and take me to the school. And I still remember that when I used to reach the school, my father would take me on a cycle. He had a bicycle, and I would sit on his bicycle in front of him, holding the handle of that cycle, and very happily going towards the school. And I still have the idea, when I used to reach the gate of the school, I would see many families, many parents, mothers and fathers with their small children, like my father with me, taking their children to the school and wanting to enter the gate. And the idea is still bright in my head. I can see, I can feel those moments and see that those children around me, someone would be sobbing, weeping, tears rolling out from their eyes, and they holding very tightly to their mom or dad and not wanting to go inside the school. And I would walk in happily with my father, and there would be some other students also who may be walking happily inside the school. But I still remember many students, 3-4-year-old kids like me at that time, they are shouting and not wanting to go, and their parents are holding them tight and pushing them inside the school. And then someone from the school comes in and holds them, and the parents leave the school. And then when we used to go inside the class, I could see many students continued weeping for most of the day. And I was reflecting on this because the subject is engagement. And I was thinking of what was prompting me or some other similar students to be inside the school, and what was happening with someone that they were not wanting to get inside the school. And this word engagement and disengagement was popping in my mind, that there was something that was encouraging or motivating students like me at that time, and some other students who happily would go inside the school. In fact, I remember even on the holidays like Saturday or Sunday, I would ask my dad and mom, go to school, I want to go to school. And they say, shut up, this is Saturday and Sunday, today is no school. And when I reflected on this, why was this happening? I can resonate with some of the experiences that I have had in the class. And one of the reasons that I feel was very important, that was holding students in the class, making them feel happy. I think it was the teacher and the kind of the climate that the teacher had created inside the class. And I can see it, I can feel it, that the empathetic attitude of the teacher in that class, the way the teacher had spread out the entire day for us, the way she had planned the activities for us, and those activities in one way or other way were impacting our curiosity and our relationship while being inside the class. The relationship, me and my other fellow small kids, the curiosity for what's going to happen next, it addressed some of those aspects. And in some cases, I remember it was giving sometimes some empowerment in the class for independent thinking or independent learning, because the way the teacher had planned some activities in the class, they were highly engaging, and those activities engaged us or the students in constructing our own understanding of the knowledge by engaging in those playful activities that were stimulating our interest. So I think today when we talk about, because now I remember we have grown, and I sometimes feel that similar things happened to us when we were in the college or higher school. And how many times, and when from college we went to the employer's place, because I still remember we used to give this example to my teams or the students whom I used to teach in my corporate role when I was a corporate trainer. We used to ask the employees as well that when you hit the office gate, what do you feel? You feel completely joyful to get inside the office and work for another couple of hours, or is it just pushing yourself inside the office? So and then we used to think and reflect on that what is it that is actually uh, pushing people. So in education, when we look from an education perspective, I think it's not education is not about filling of a pail, but it's about lighting of a fire. uh, I think when as a teacher, what do we aim uh, uh, when we have our students in the class? What is our objective? What's our aim when we are dealing with them? Uh, is our objective to engage students? That means sparking their intellectual curiosity, encouraging them uh, to ask thought-provoking questions, and motivating them to tackle challenging problems. So how do we plan when we go inside the class, when we interact with the students, when we bring in the students? So if the objective is to engage them uh, um, in the class, we can inspire them to excel in the class only when we are able to engage them in the class. And that is one of the ways of making them more productive lifelong learners. So I think teacher has to play a very important role when it comes to strengthening those engaging chords, especially in the changing times where the learning styles of students have changed. The technology has created so much of havoc that what we used to do in traditional methods of teaching in the class, that teaching method has moved from teaching to facilitating. Today the students come more informed than the teachers themselves, and the role of teacher in a class has completely changed. And I tell it to my faculty as well, that it's not about the teaching, it's about the facilitating inside the class. So a teacher has to be more empathetic while planning and preparing for handling the students. So I think the role of teacher has become very, very crucial. At the same time, understanding the role of a teacher in strengthening the inclusive learning environment in the class, which means that understanding the learning preferences of the student today, because most of the students have different learning styles, different learning preferences, different motivation, different purposes, aims, and objectives. Gone are the days when we had students only coming to become an engineer or a doctor or a manager. Today the professions have changed so differently that every student has a very, very unique and different propositions planned for himself or herself. And sometimes some students do not have at all, and that's another challenge that a teacher faces inside the class. So I think this is very crucial from a planning perspective, that what strategies today teachers adopt. And the second thing I also want to bring is that we have to see it from a more holistic perspective. While we are today discussing only the maybe the engagements inside the classroom, or engagements once the student is in, I think the entire life cycle of a student right from the day he decides to enter into a college, plans and prepares and makes his choices for the college. From that day until the day a student exits and goes inside the work environment, I think this entire the entire lifespan of a student has also to be understood. What motivates a student to come to a specific college? Those motivations will always be reinforced as the student operates through various classes or interacts with various teachers, because these students, when they enter inside an institution, they already have a perception about that institution. So sometimes those perceptions may be okay, not okay, good, bad. So how a teacher understands those motivations before a student starts his journey in the institution, that also is an important aspect that teachers would have to understand. And also, when students move out, they become our ambassadors in the work environment, and that their role as an ambassador also impacts the students who are joining us. So the cycle continues. So I have few things to share that is very important from my perspective for a teacher to understand that what is important that will strengthen the strategy of engaging students in the class. I think first thing I would like to share is it's very important for a teacher to get to know your own students. Most of the researchers have shown that when you build relationships with students by getting to know them and allowing them to know you, they will learn more. It will facilitate their learning inside the class. So by understanding the students' background, their interest, as a teacher, you will be equipped to connect the class content to their personal lives, to their professional lives that they aspire in future. And you will, as a teacher, you will also enjoy teaching more as well, because the chord that you will be able to set with the students based on your personal understanding of every student will strengthen that chord between you and the student, and it will create students' interest in what you are doing, and it will further encourage you as well, because as a teacher you also need to be motivated to teach and bring in some creative aspects of teaching in the class. So the first step to me, I think, is as a teacher, how do you get to know your student and each student? So I remember when we were in the corporate world, I was in IBM, and we used to run various short-term programs and long-term programs. We used to make sure, as facilitators or faculty, we used to make sure that we create some kind of environment in the class on day one. If it was a 1 week program or a 2 weeks program, we would create some kind of an activity in the class where students would share about their personal lives, their professional aspirations, their strengths, their hobbies, and many other things. So we created certain index cards in the class, and people would have to stick those index cards in the class. Or sometimes we will create some kind of because those days we didn't use the Google Forms. We created a hard copy form, and we would send in advance to all the participants, maybe a month in advance, and students or the participating students would fill those forms and send it back to the training department. And then the department in our office would examine every student, would bucket them in terms of their hobbies, interests, and based on what student information we have received, that information would help us to create a class environment when these students will actually hit the class. So I think the first thing I always recommend to my faculty here, and when I was in IBM and other institutions I worked, that know your participants before they are coming to your class. In IBM, we used to use a psychometric tool, and I don't know whether you have heard about that. We used to introduce a psychometric tool which we called Herman Brain Dominance Instrument, HBDI. This HBDI tool was to do a psychometric assessment of individual participants on their thinking preferences. We all know we have left brain, right brain thinking models today available, and Herman had further classified that thinking preferences to a 4-quadrant thinking model. So IBM used to invest in doing a pre-assessment of all the participants before we could bring in them to the leadership development programs. And by looking at their profiles, it would give a facilitator a very deep understanding of the clusters inside the class, whether we have a group of analytical thinkers in the class, or intuitive thinkers in the class, or organized preferences in the class, or empathetic or relationship oriented people in the class. Based on that, the program facilitation was planned by the teacher. So giving reference to it, I think knowing your students is very, very important, even when they are in the college life. Second thing, I think when these participants used to come inside the class after we started the program, I remember the first and the opening thing we used to do with them was setting the expectations of the participants very clearly. See, same goes with the students. When students are connected about what kind of impressions they will have on their teachers, and often this uncertainty makes them hesitant to speak up in the class. So if expectations have been set right in the beginning, there would be very lesser hesitations inside the class when the students are wanting to come and share something. And sometimes when those aspects are not handled right in the beginning, sometimes you find challenges, especially in the case of students, because when they come to the class, they don't know, because they are always guided by the grades. The teacher will grade them for A, B, C, D things. So they have always a fear in the mind that what kind of impressions their behavior, their conversation, their communication will have on the teachers. So sometimes this feeling inside the students can create certain uncertainties and can create certain hesitancies in them, and that will prevent them from speaking in the class. So this kind of self-censoring can become an obstacle to a collective learning that you have designed as a teacher, where you want that students should exchange the ideas. But if this aspect is not taken care, you may have challenges. Student may not be free to come and speak and share their ideas. So it's important that that a faculty creates a climate of what we call psychological safety within the classroom, and where students do not feel threatened. Because see, today students come from different backgrounds and their different experiences. In different schools, they have had different stimuluses and different nurturing environments that they have gone through. So a teacher has a responsibility to create that environment that doesn't make them feel threatened for what they say and speak inside the class. So that's where the role of a teacher is very, very important. How to make a class a more participative, and where everyone comes and participates without any inherent hitch that they may have or they may be carrying with them. So that part has to be removed, and that can only happen when you develop some kind of techniques right in the beginning, after knowing your students, you create that create that environment where that freedom, where the feel of expression is not hindered. So that's the second thing. If you have to really make sure that the students feel engaged in the class. These days, we have this challenge coming in the digital classes, because most of the times students, you may see they have switched off their videos. They are not participating. We are not sure sometimes whether they are listening even to you or not, or they are only participating for the sake of attendances. So there are certain challenges, and I think it's very important for a teacher to make sure that for the students' expectations for their participation is established right in the beginning. So as you build your class, as you develop your strategies for the class, I think engagement in a class also happens when the work you, or the assignments or the tasks that you give to students is felt by student as very meaningful. They personally feel that the activities that they have been involved into, or the tasks that faculty has given in the class, they find some personal meaning in those activities. What should a faculty do now that, based on the knowledge that you have had with the students, their interests, their learning styles, their preferences, their past background, and all that, their aspirations, their career objectives? So how do you make sure that the topic that you are covering in the class is related to their aspirations, to their objectives, to their careers, to whatever they are passionate about in their life? Not only passion, I think even when you know they have some other classes also, how do you see what you are facilitating in a class? It will have some bearing on some other aspects of their classes. So that aspect has to be thought through when you are developing some assignments in the class. So are you creating a situation where students have a scope of asking so what in all the situations? For example, these days we have a challenge of COVID, and most of the times when we have students coming in the class, I'm just giving an example. So when students come in the class, we create some kind of an activity where students are asked that that why didn't the Indians take the COVID threat more seriously in late 2020 and in the early 2021? Now, this is something where students, you are opening your activities with some of such questions, where students have an opportunity of thinking and relating to certain activities, or relating to some of their perceptions, relating to certain dimensions that they have experienced on their own. So the point I'm trying to bring is that whatever you plan, that whatever you say in the class, whatever you offer them in the class, they must have an opportunity of asking questions like, so what? So, and that so what provokes them to think. Then another aspect is that students who come to class, I think one important activity we also found in corporate world is when we used to bring these participants to the program, pre-work that we used to give to them was very, very helpful. But the important point was that the pre-work needs to be very meaningful. And sometimes pre-work is not designed with well thought purpose. So if students are given a very meaningful pre-work, they will come to class more prepared, and their contribution in the class could be more effective. And that all depends how that pre-work has been planned. Now, pre-work can be, I remember we used to give them some, say, reading assignments, or we used to ask them to do some basic survey within the organization. If the topic was on leadership or operations management or finance management, depending upon the topic, we would give them some activities where they may go to other departments and do some internal surveys, or they may go and conduct some internal interviews with some of the other senior professionals in the organization in the relevant field. Some pre-work always carried a meaningful outcome for the students, because when they came inside the class, they had various ideas that they had developed during that pre-work, which they could relate when some of the content was facilitated inside the class. So as I said in the previous part, that so what part. So what I feel that this pre-work part is also important, because it's about preparing them for the engagement plan that you have inside the class. So, but it requires a lot of effort from the facilitator or the teacher today that we talk about. Pre-work has to be well thought through. Various intricacies of the topic that you have to cover inside the class, you must think and plan pre-work in a well drafted manner, so that you know what kind of objectives you have inside the class. The design of pre-work is going to address and increase that stimulation and engagement for a student when the topic is actually run inside the class. I think another challenge, and that's where I suggest that will strengthen what we call engagements inside the class, is how you pace your lessons well inside the class. Which means that, see, I have seen that attention span of most of the participants inside the class is sometimes very short. And if the lessons that you are conducting or teaching in the class, if the pace is not maintained in the class in terms of keeping student attention alive, you may lose student very fast. If you, for example, many teachers I saw, they have a long lecture inside a class, and because they continue with a long lecture inside the class becomes a very passive kind of a it creates a passive kind of a environment, and there's no active participation. Many of the students already have switched off, and because of that, the engagements do not get strengthened because we don't have students' active involvement. And that reason is because the pace with which a faculty or a teacher has planned it's stopping. So I think teachers must think about when they have a lecture, so how in that lecture, in between, after 10 minutes or 7 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, there is some kind of a question that they may throw to the participants. So to have a quick verbal involvement of the student or a verbal discussion among the students. And the question must offer some kind of interaction and break that monotony of lecturing with the students. But it depends that you may want to throw a question, you may want to you know what we used to do, we may show some video, or if it's an online kind of a class, you may want to have online polls. We have many of the tools that most of the digital platform tools give us the polling options as well. Or you may have group work being shared among the participants within the class. It may be digital or in the classroom. But what is important is that lessons, when you are delivering in the class, the pace is managed in order to make sure that the participant attention is not lost. So multiple techniques can be adopted. I remember one of the activities I heard about some time back. This activity is called I think they called it quest questions. And this quest questions was invented by, I heard about by some university. I forgot the name of the university, but the term quest questions was is a strategy that is invented to engage the students inside the class, where the faculty teaching shifts from making a statement to starting to wonder and ask questions. So for example, sometimes in the classroom, when the teacher comes and states a topic, the quest question technique is adopted in a way that there is prohibition on using of statements during that quest question activity, and normal statements are not allowed. And students, based on the opening statement or a question that the teacher has asked in the class, have to ask questions, and statements are completely ruled out. So when the teacher gives that opening statement or a question, the quest question session actually begins. And in that process, any student who makes a statement instead of a question, you can have some kind of penalty or some kind of someone showing up, hey, this is not the rule being followed, or something like that. The intention is that quest questions provoke a student to think more about that statement that the teacher has given in the class, but respond only in the form of a questions. So that's also how in some classes you pace up your learning lessons very well. I think another aspect that I recall is that how a teacher makes learning experiences more active and varied, which means that you have to incorporate multiple approaches to learning. Like for example, we talked about a quest question being adopted in the class because some people, they adopt a case method in the class, but most of the times depending only on one set of activity or using only case methods inside the class can actually make the whole purpose redundant, because there needs to be a pedagogical variety also adopted by the faculty. So most of the time, some people, I remember in our corporate days, we used to have the flipped classroom, which today also most of the teachers talk about, because I found that this instructional strategy is highly engaging, and it supports that differentiated learning preferences inside the class. Say for example, we used to have a subject, for example, leadership competencies or we used to have a topic on motivation. So we would divide the class and give, say for example, the question was motivation. So we'll divide the class of, if it's a class of 30 or 20, into a group of 4 or 5, and then give a topic within motivation, and what is motivation, how it happens, to one set of groups. Then another set of group, we will give an activity on, discuss on the following theories of motivation. Then we will give to some group, what are the barriers to motivation. Then we would give someone to, what are the enablers of motivation. Then we would give some group, have you recognized some of the strategies organizations adopt for increasing motivation. And then we give the groups time to prepare for that, and then they can be given flip charts, or they can be given, they can prepare a presentation, or they can give an extempore talk depending upon what the instructions facilitator has given in the class. And then they would come and they would present it to the class. And during their presentation, the other groups are supposed to ask questions, and that group is supposed to respond to those questions, and they have a time bar on that. And this is being facilitated by the teacher by only asking questions. So wherever a teacher knows, because sometimes, because teacher knows most of the answers, so teacher doesn't have to interject with answers. The teacher's role in this flip class is to ask the questions, so that the presenting group and the other observing group, their curiosities are further invoked and they are connected. And this way, I found personally that this was a very good strategy, because in the corporate world, we have most of the times people who come from different backgrounds, different job roles, different profiles, different expectations, different experiences. They loved this concept, and they felt completely empowered while doing these activities. And most of the times they would research on their own, and they would go and interact with other people, and they would bank on each other's knowledge. They would cumulatively increase their knowledge. And at the end, sometimes when the session was over, the facilitator would summarize the entire learning in the class. And facilitators in certain demonstrable flip classes I have seen, they were highly loved by the students or the participants, because the technique, this technique of flip class, when it was appropriately used by the facilitators, it would create a lot of self-esteem, and people would feel that their views and points are very important. They would feel themselves becoming teachers in the class, and that created that sense of worth among the participants. So I think this is also an important aspect, that when we are teaching in the class, we must use multiple approaches to learning. I remember sometimes, as facilitators, we used to ask sketch noting in the class, and this sketch noting was where participants, a topic was given, a topic was discussed, and then every participant had to make their notes, not in the form of only words, but they had to create some form of drawing around that topic, and creating sketches, and like a slide, and it's a sketchy slide. And it applied to any subject. I remember it can apply to finance, it can apply to management, it can apply to HR, marketing, depending upon the student absorption. The student would create their own sketches inside the class, and then they would display them on the boards around in the class, and it created a lot of excitement in the class. I remember during that time. This can also be used today on the tools that we have on the digital platforms as well. This can be done. There is another technique I remember in the classes teachers would use is brain writing. It's not brainstorming. It's like brainstorming, but it's an individual brainstorming. It's called brain writing. So the facilitator would come inside the class, or the teacher would come inside the class, and they would drop topic, they would write that topic on the board and ask every participant in the class, okay, now whatever comes to your mind for this topic, please start writing in 5, 7, 8, 10 bullets, and then share with the group. So it can be on any topic. You can have the topic on management, leadership, finance. You can have a topic on, say, for example, motivation, for example, on currency, for example, banking. You write that topic on the board and then ask people. So depending upon their how they have internalized that word or topic, the students will keep on relating and reflecting all across. So I think some of these activities must be also further explored. There are many other innovative practices that people leverage inside a class. We use role plays inside a class, but the most important part is teachers' preparation. Teachers would have mentally simulated when they are preparing any activity. I remember when we used to design some kind of activity in the class, we would actually simulate it in our head that how is this activity actually going to be facilitated. We would simulate that entire process in our head and then see which are the dimensions, which are the goods and not so goods going to happen in the class. And then we would sometimes our own faculties, a group of faculties that we had, we used to come all faculties together and run those newly experimented or innovative techniques that we want to implement in the class as faculties. We would run that within the group of faculties first during our faculty sessions, and then we will find some positives, negatives, and okays, not okays, and then we will reform that activity and then take it to the classroom to make sure that the learning objectives that were intended, with which that learning activity was planned, it will meet those activities in the class. So today, for example, in Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, one important thing is we have one semester where students are in the class, another semester where students are in the industry campus doing their OJT. So it's a very different kind of a learning environment here. Besides classroom, their extension is also at the workplace every semester. Now the challenge is we cannot leave that part unregulated and uncontrolled. So this university has developed a digital platform for on-the-job training, and we call it a OJT diary. So in OJT diary, everything is digital, and there is a closer monitoring of what activities students are doing there. And then based on what they are doing in the industry, what's coming on the OJT diary, the faculty's responsibilities when or capturing all those experiences week on week that they have in the industry and bringing those to their techniques that they are going to adopt next when the student is back in the class. So banking on that experience and developing a new initiative, new activity, new approach inside the class. And by that way, the students who used to come to the class after finishing their second semester OJT or fourth semester OJT, they would feel highly ignited and excited because they could relate to that activity now that has been developed inside the class. So I feel pedagogical variety is very important, but for that pedagogical variety, it is very, very important for a faculty to really prepare, and preparation comes from understanding and exploring. Most of the time, our faculties, they have to go and visit the industry. In Vishwakarma University, every faculty mandatorily has to spend 2 weeks every semester in the industry. So they have to go, they have to interact with the industry people, they have to understand where our students are working, new initiatives, new projects of the industry, new challenges, and new inputs coming from the industry mentors. And then they have to go and prepare for their class. And that preparation is sometimes making them more engaging. So I think faculty preparation in this part is very important. Lastly, I think one important thing is that it's very important that students feel worthwhile for what they have done. Some something is good, something is very good, something is extremely good, something is not good. But how does a teacher create an environment of celebrating that student's success in the class and beyond the classroom as well? So that can happen in many forms. So that is very important. How you show as a teacher you care for the students. It can be inside the class, it can be outside the class. We have monthly magazines, or we have some newsletters coming up, we have some events happening. So how do you make students to come and feel recognized for what they have done, or what they have contributed, what they have achieved inside the class? I think that also enhances the students' motivation when they are inside the class. So with that, I think I've taken my 30 minutes. I can go on this, but I think this is what I would share with all of you. I think, as I said, it is very important that our student engagements plan, whatever we plan, it must have an objective of creating an independent motivation to learn among the students. Individually, students must feel motivated to learn inside the class, and there must be an approach towards developing certain challenges for which a student is motivated to work on and work through those challenges, and they are able to create their own understanding of the knowledge by thinking deeply and making connections to the information that has been provided and to the real world application. I think all this, if it is taken care, it's going to be an engaging experience for students, and students will enjoy, love, and feel motivated. Besides this, the new in the new technological challenges that we are now going, I think the technology is throwing us more challenges how to engage students. We need to learn about the intricacies of the technology and prepare accordingly, and make sure that we address the issues of the new emerging expectations of students in a virtual world. So with that, I stop myself here, and in case there's any question, otherwise what I would suggest that we can have the some more questions coming from the teachers on the class, and we can put it up for more discussions here in the group.
Participants, please ask your questions.
Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Madhavi.
Good morning.
Sir, you were talking about different methods of, encouraging, or let me say, involving student more into the class. I would just like to add one point there, just one point, that I have experimented with, storytelling, mythological stories. I have been mapping with a lot of management theories and techniques that we have used, and I found myself quite successful there. The student involvement has been tremendous in my class. So I would just like to know if you agree with the concept, or you think that it is using history, that's all.
I think right from the day we are born until we perish out of this world, what inspires and motivates and excites us is stories.
Oh, thanks for that.
So as I said, that teachers would have to adopt different techniques. So let's talk this part. This is a very important part. So how do a faculty today identify a story, construct a story, and link that story to the topic? So what do you think about it? How does a faculty do that?
Sir, I have employed, just to make sure that I'm not bringing religion into the class, I picked up stories from Jataka tales and Panchantantras and At times, even the scientists, the biographies of certain scientists like, Jagdish Chandra Bose, and sometimes I made them this movie, Man Who Knew Infinity. I made them see that movie in bits and pieces for almost 1 week.
Very true.
Because there was so much of there is a course we have designed. It is called Indian Ethics and Management Education. Sorry, it is IEME, yeah, Indian Ethics and Management Education. That's what it is. So there we are trying to map our MOB concepts and all the concepts they'll be reading in future semesters. We tried to to put it in a nutshell, we tried to say if civilization started in India, then management also started in India. Because whenever we talk about marketing management, we are referring to Kotler. We don't refer to Arthashastra.
So let me ask you. One is, and this is for other people also on this in this program. When you say story, and you said you picked a story from Jataka Tales, are there any other ways of storytelling? Are there any other aspects or dimensions that you can consider when you are developing or when you are narrating a story inside a class? Can you also suggest, other than the Jataka Tales, other than the historical tales?
Yeah. No. This was like, when we have a 15-day orientation program before they enter into the actual course. So there it had to be a kind of ice breaking. We had to bring, students from different backgrounds to acclimatize to management environment. So that is why we started at the grassroots level.
No, that's fine. That's okay. That's fine. I'm saying that's okay. I'm saying, is there any other way other than going into the Jataka Tales, which is okay? Is there anything else that we can do when it comes to stories? As a story is a very powerful method of engaging, connecting, relating certain topics. What all other things can be done by a teacher to...
So that is a route for innovative thinking, creative thinking. It all starts from there, because there is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. You are only exploring, you're trying to open their mind, you're encouraging them to think. And tomorrow, when they suppose that they want to look at themselves as managers, then they should know how to take decisions. So it's for example, if we are talking about Chandragupta Maurya, okay, why was he identified by Chanakya? Why only him? Personality traits. We can bank upon, like, leaders are born and leaders are made. So what were the leadership traits he was born with, and what was the leadership traits he inculcated after he met his teacher? That's why that's how the concepts were slowly introduced in the class.
So let me share, in my experience when I was a facilitator, I remember, and there are many examples that I can share. One example which comes to my mind is, I was conducting a program on in IBM, we used to call it leading at the rate managers excellence. It was a manager excellence program. And I had first line managers in my program from various processes of IBM. It was a class of around 30-40 people. I'm recalling about an incident where we had developed a activity in the class on, and the story was on the program. The session that day was on managerial style. So we know we have those 6 managerial style: authoritative, coercive, affiliative, coaching, pace setting, and democratic. So these 6 styles we had to teach that day to the participants. And then there was a session where we had kept it for sharing your experiences in the form of stories. We had one manager who was himself a manager. He shared a story of himself. He was in the product development department many years back before he became the frontline manager. And he shared in the class, and there were many other people, but I'm sharing the story and how it impacted other people. He shared, sir, that some years back when I was in the product development department, and my boss had called all the team. There was a client who we had submitted a product development design plan, but the client that evening or in the morning had sent some kind of notes, and they were urgently waiting for something different which they had given as inputs. And the boss had called them, and boss had called him because he was the product development specialist. And the boss said, this has to be completed, and he knew that he had to work in the lab for some time, and it's not going to finish in next 8-10 hours. The problem with him was that it was his son's birthday, I think first birthday, and he had promised his wife that he will organize some birthday party and all that. And he said, I was confused what to do. And he said that he spoke to his wife, and wife became very upset about the situation. And but then he had no choice, because it was a client requirement and he had to work on that. And he knew if he doesn't do this today, the client will become upset, the boss will become upset. And it was not only about they being upset, it was about being the criticality of the organization. So he started sharing. That's a long story, cutting it into short, and he talked about all those aspects. And then the boss coming and asking about it with a very low heart. He said, boss, yes, I will do it and I will complete it. And he went into it, and he shared some more challenges he faced while doing that, and he went on doing that. And the deadline was there, he had to complete it, so he put all the head and heart into it. किसी तरह से complete हो जाए, but it didn't get completed by 5-6 o'clock, and it kept on stretching, and he was able to finish it by 10:30, something like 10:30, 11. By the time he finished, he called the boss. The assignment is done. Boss says, okay, very good, submitted. Boss reviewed it on call and said, okay, send it to the client. They sent it to the client, and then he said, his name was Ravi. He said, Ravi, I need you to come immediately with this assignment to this place. So he was now a little bit very angry, that I finished the assignment and now he is calling me to that place. So, but he had no choice. He went to that place. It was somewhere near their office, and he saw someone waiting there, and he went there. They went together in the car. The guy took him. The boss had sent person. He didn't know who that guy is. They went along with, and he took them to a nearby hotel. And to his surprise, when he was taken inside, the entire product development team and some of his well-known friends and colleagues, and his wife, his children, and a big cake in front of him in the hotel room wherever they had organized this. It was a big shock and surprise to him. The boss had already connected through his team, his family, his wife, and had explained to them the challenge. And in the process, they had promised that we will organize this event today, but let him finish his assignment. And by the time he reached there, he was so surprised, so shocked, and so excited. Now, he was sharing that this experience always stayed in my mind as the kind of leader I worked for, the kind of motivation he would give me every time I worked for him, the kind of inspiration this person would give. And this manager, when he was sharing, he said, I have taken a vow in my life. I will always be empathetic. I will always demonstrate these values. And now this was a personal life story of an individual. And I realized one thing when this person was sharing the story with all the people around. It was a live experience. It was an experience of an individual in his own life and capacity in the profession, and everyone who sitting in the class, they could relate to their situation because they would have gone through this or a similar situation in their lives. But with this experience that he was sharing, he could inspire himself as well as he could inspire many other people in the class that what can be done better by good leaders or good managers. So I learned one thing, that storytelling, sometimes one is our age-old pearls that we have. They come from Mahabharata, they come from Bhagavad Gita, they come from some other sources, they come from Panchatantra. There are life stories as well. And if you ask students to bring their personal experiences in the form of stories to come and share in the class, or you share personal stories as teachers, sometimes I find that storytelling with the live experiences, real-time experiences, their student experiences, teacher experiences, or some other teacher experiences, the students of today's age, they feel more connected, they resonated to such stories. So that also requires you to research sometimes. You know, faculties have to interact with other faculties. Faculties have to be very curious to note such stories, and then how to use those stories in a powerful way inside the class. I think you brought a very valid point that storytelling is a powerful way of engaging the student. And I wanted to add that live stories, real-time stories, actual stories where students can connect can also further add to the purpose that you share.
I think so. There's one more question from Dr. Uttam Kumar. Dr. Uttam, you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. I'm question with you. How can teachers encourage to a student about innovative ideas of different segment?
So your question is, how can you encourage a student to bring innovative ideas? Am I right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes.
yeah. So I don't know how many of you have read about 6 Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono. If any one of you have read about 6 Thinking Hats, concept of moving from one hat to another hat inside the class. I don't completely recall the each color and what it resonates, but I understand the concept of the 6 thinking hats. So for example, they have a red hat and a yellow hat, or a green hat or a black hat, and each hat has a purpose and a theme. Now, what happens in, suppose you have a topic today inside the class, and that topic is about discussing some issues. For example, we talk about the leadership style. We talk about the coercive leadership style, or a pace-setting leadership style, or a democratic leadership style. Now, when you are debating democratic leadership style or a specific style, you move from different thinking hats. The hats are the specific thinking activities that a person has to do. Now, for example, we are talking about green hat. Now, for example, green hat says all the possibilities that can be associated with democratic managerial style. So what all are the good things that you can share about democratic leadership style can demonstrate? Then the another hat is, say we are talking about all the say yellow thinking hat. Yellow thinking hat is what all is the caution that a democratic leadership style needs to think of. Then another thinking style is say black thinking head style. It talks about you to think of all the situations that this thinking style can be detrimental. You can criticize that thinking style. So the intent is that when you are discussing in the class, are you allowing students to think from different modes of thinking? Because in each mode of thinking, there is a different approach, different response, and different reaction. So today what happens is most of our students, most of our people, most of the individuals are trained by virtue of their nurturing, by virtue of their growth and development. They are trained to think in one specific thinking mode. And because they are trained to think only in one specific thinking mode, they are not trained to think in other thinking modes. So for example, हमें कोई चीज दिखाई जाती है, we have been trained largely to point out the defects in that. That's the most common behavior of thinking that we have in our thinking we have. But can you develop an activity in the class where any topic that you have, you make sure that students have to compulsorily think only in that defined, it can be critics, it can be positives, it can be negatives, it can be new ideas, it can be some different aspects of that. Do you create that kind of an environment in the class? That's one. But for that, you also need students to do some preparation for that. They have to read the various aspects. They have to explore the various aspects. You have to, point them towards those things before they come in the class for sharing okays, not okays, possibilities, not possibilities, challenges. So that process has to be developed by a faculty. And if you look at various tools and techniques, those tools and techniques can really encourage students to think from and contribute their thoughts and ideas from different modes. And when different mode thinking is contributed in the class, it enriches the overall contribution that has come in the class and create a more diverse viewpoint for a specific subject. And from that diverse viewpoint, you can have some very select innovative ideas emerging out.
Any other question? Participants? Please ask your questions. So one last question from my side before we close, that you have been part of the national education policy implementation, which would be trying to implement the new education policy 2020. So how do you think that will bring about a transformation in our education system in terms of student engagement, in terms of teaching methodology, or the way content is being delivered in classes?
I think that's a very good question, Saima ji. One of the biggest tectonical shifts today in the new education policy 2020 is that the age-old model that we used to have, 10 plus 2 plus 10 plus 2 plus 3 model, has been, we have now gone away with that. We are not going to, we are going to a new model, which is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. Now, earlier we used to have a single paid brush with which we will develop our children in 10 plus 2 model. But now that 10 plus 2 model has been broken. Now, what will happen? Before I talk about that, the challenge today was that the outcome of 10 plus 2 was an input to the plus 3, the higher education. So the quality of the students that we used to get from 10 plus 2 model was determining the quality of their learning and contribution, ideation as they went into the higher education. And the issues and challenges and the roadblocks that we had in the 10 plus 2 model that prevented children to develop their innate potential was one of the biggest roadblock for being innovative as they move to the higher education. I think now that part is now being taken care with 5+3+3+4 is a beautiful model. And if it has worked well as what has been proposed in the higher education, is that first 5 years are very crucial to develop the formative years of the children. This is where the thinking actually develops. This is where the creativity, innovation of the children, their analytical abilities, the foundation for that is set at that stage. Now, this is going to be a big transformation in the education. We never used to think in this way. We never used to think in the way where child's individuality has to be respected. We just pushed everything on his or her head, and that is what they had to actually adapt to and develop themselves. Now, the education that has been proposed now in the new education is that education will not be pushed on the children. Children's individuality would be respected, and based on that they would be given opportunities. And that's where the child involvement at the early stages and nurturing and development of their innate potential, innate thinking, innate abilities is a game changer. Second is, I think Lok Vidya that is being introduced in this apprenticeship that is being introduced at the early school stages. These are fundamentals of another shift that we are going to have in this education. And then you have vocational education integration with the higher education. That is another shift that we are going to. The bigger shift is three language formula that has been adopted along with the mother tongue formula. This is another shift. We had education not reaching out to millions of people in the manner it should have reached and allowed them to express what is inside them, because the mother tongue was never made as a method or a mode of expression for them. This is going to make a bigger shift in the coming days. And then when students move to the higher education side, the government has already proposed in that besides NSQF, National Skill Qualification Framework, we will have the National Education Qualification Framework. That will be another game-changing aspects. Then the research, the way government has talked about creating the National Research Foundation and bringing in a lot of focus on that. Teacher development is another area that the new education policy has talked about. I think there are so many things this new education policy has talked about to make education more meaningful, to make education more outcome-based, and to make education more contributing towards the overall growth and development of society as well as the individual. I think these changes in the coming days are going to make a big shift in the education and impact the overall holistic development of an individual and be a good contributor to society in whatever way that person feels he or she can contribute, not the way society wants him to contribute, but the way individual wants to contribute towards the growth of the society. This shift from society to individual, recognizing the need of society and then finding his relevance to the need, this shift is a game changer.
Sir, one question, sir, on this new education policy. That is, since the institutions, if they implement new education policy, they need different faculty members for different disciplines they are going to offer. So that means it's going to escalate the cost. If the cost of education is then escalating, don't you think it is disadvantageous for the marginalized people, since the cost of education is increasing? So how we can mitigate that?
I think if you look at if you read the document that government had circulated, it was initially some 300 pages, now 60-page document that has circulated. It has mentioned at most of the places that there would be cluster model that the government would be focusing on. So which means in every region, there could be some of the schools collaborating together and working on development of certain aspects that this program has talked about. So while your point is valid, but I think the collaboration part that this new education policy has talked about, leveraging each other's assets and allowing that to do in the coming days, I think one part I feel in the coming days, that part is going to be addressed from that perspective. Besides this, I think government has already proposed a 3%, 6% budget in the coming days, 6% of the GDP for the new education policy. So I think such a big shift is also going to help and facilitate some of such activities where the cost escalations could be high. I think government is very much aware of it, that these escalations could become obstacle, but I feel that in the coming days, this will not become an obstacle. Rather, there would be more methods and ways identified to facilitate it.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I want to ask one question, that in the new education policy, see, they have introduced a bundle of subjects for class 11th and 12th, that even a person from non-medical background, they can study some subjects from the commerce background, right? So do you think that will it be really beneficial for the students and for their future?
Absolutely. I think this is the most innovative thing that the government has introduced in this field of education innovation. See, today we talk of multidisciplinary education ourselves, and we have seen how multidisciplinary education has actually contributed towards the growth and development. In fact, I remember in the coming days, in the last few years, the liberal arts has actually given a big thrust to innovation. And today, students of liberal arts, they are not only contributing in one specific area. Most of the organizations, whether manufacturing, non-manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, every industry finds students with such mindset and such thinking approaches very helpful in the industry. I feel there's a large segment of our students today who drop out because their likes and dislikes sometimes are not addressed. And this open basket of moving and choosing will encourage many students to pursue their aspirations further. You see, to just look at the general enrollment ratio today in India. Our general enrollment ratio is 27%. Now, what does it mean? It means almost 74% of students do not enroll themselves in higher education. Where do they go? And if you see, the large segment among them would have certain aspirations which could have been fulfilled if the flexibility of choosing was given to them. Most of the times, the roadblocks of the previous model did not allow students. You see, in class 9th and 10th, students had to pass out and they had to be regimentized either in commerce or in arts or in science. Now, this regimentization will go away. It will give more flexibility and empowerment to students to make choices based on their personal preferences. And I feel this will suit to the narrative of individuality of every individual and will give him or her freedom to make decisions of pursuing certain things in their own way in their life. I am of a strong opinion that why should a student be only a student of one university? Student may go to one university, do some course, go to another university, do some additional course, go to another university, and combination of all that should allow him or her to get a degree. That flexibility should be there. It must be more learner or learning centric models that we must be developing, and giving everyone an opportunity to grow and develop in their own way that they feel is comfortable to them, and that comfort can create contribution from them. This is my personal view.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you, sir, for your enriching and thought-provoking session. And I'm very sure that our participants must have benefited from your wonderful insight. Thank you, sir, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You have a
request
great
participants to stay back.
Can I log out?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please extend my thanks to Professor Sujata ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining. So on day 4th, you have a session on simulation, right? So Dr. Bindu, along with Professor Kedot, would be taking that session, which will have 3 sessions. So this is on, let me tell you, this is on 8th July, right? So I've already sent a mail where teams have been divided, and you would be working on a software, on a licensed marketplace software. So Dr. Bindu wanted to join the session and tell you about that.